It's me that nobody's wishing to sit close to, but the city manager, Lawrence Christian, is sitting out here up front. And Glenn Mendalis is typically not invited, our attorney, to budget meetings. He'll be here this afternoon. Would like to identify that Brant is with the IT department. Dan could not be here today. He's helping us run the cameras. Margaret Carson's in back. Liz Lingo, our arborist. June Embry from the parking department's here. Lynn Cohen, our communications specialist here. And I want to remind everybody that we do have hard copies of the budget up front on the document table corner here. If you need one, please come up and grab one. If we run out, Margaret will get some more. So I'd like to thank everybody that's here in person. I noticed that the Main Street folks, I guess you must be asking for money because you've got coats and ties on today. So we know your little secret. We'll see if it works. I want to thank you for being here in person. I want to thank everybody else that's watching virtually. And as I usually do, I want to remind everybody that support documents, when they're available, are available online. Now, I have to admit, I'm going to be upfront with you, is that we failed, I believe, in supplying the support documents timely, and we will definitely work better on that. Even to this very moment, we don't have the budget embedded in the agenda. And so again, that's a failing on our part. We will address it. I will say that this is an introductory discussion. I think we'll be going slow enough that we'll be able to have the public follow along, whether it's virtually or with the hard copies. I want to remind anybody that's talking about the budget today that the pages are numbered in the top left corner. And also there are line item numbers so that we can articulate very clearly of what lines we're talking about, so that everybody in the room and those watching virtually are able to follow along with this conversation. The electronic copy of the budget will be embedded after the fact. I can't guarantee today, but I would willing to bet by tomorrow, definitely. And then again, budgets, Margaret, we may need to go ahead and print some more. And here's two up here if you want Margaret to put those up there. With that, the purpose, let's see, roll call. Correspondence. There's no correspondence been identified. Matt Janis, Building and Licensing Supervisor, just joined us. Thank you. Max Hamby from the IT Department, Supervisor, just joined us. Welcome aboard. Today's special meeting is to introduce and to discuss draft budget for fiscal year 2023-2024, including capital improvement program as presented by the assistant manager and city manager, to include but not limited to the items noted on the agenda. Parking and other departments. We're going to talk about the Canal dock and contribution requests by the four agencies that usually come in front of us. With that, I would like to turn it over to Evan Miller. Evan, I'd like you to start, though, with the budget meeting itinerary for the rest of the program, the dates and the content. We all need to be mindful that this is a preliminary budget. We need to be flexible depending on how much we get done at each meeting. But maybe we'll give you a flavor of how and when we're going to be talking about different topics.
Sure.
Evan, turn it over to you, please.
Thank you, Mayor. So what is displayed on the screen is our tentative schedule for the Commissioner's special budget meetings. That breaks out the day as well as the time for each of those budget meetings and includes in there the departments that we will plan to present at those budget meetings. So for today, Friday, January 20th, our 9 a.m. budget meeting, we'll discuss contributions, the general fund revenue, the mayor and commissioner's budget, the treasurer, administration, alderman, information technology, building and licensing, parking meter, parking permits, the parks department, recreation and tennis, and finally the canal dock. At future budget meetings, the next budget meeting will be Monday, February 6th at 2 p.m. We'll discuss the enterprise fund revenue and the public works departments. So streets, water, wastewater, building and grounds, fleet, as well as the comfort stations. Our third budget meeting, which is scheduled for Friday, February 17th at 9 a.m., we will continue with the following departments: police, dispatch, beach patrol, the bandstand, communications, and then we'll also discuss at that meeting the seasonal employee incentives that we offered this past summer and that we would look to continue for next summer, because those seasonal incentives largely impact those departments. And then finally, we just have placeholders for our fourth budget meeting, which is Monday, March 6th at 2 p.m. That would just be a final review of all departments and the capital improvement plan. And then the last meeting is for any final discussion and adoption. So that is just a glance at our 5 budget meetings that we currently have scheduled and what we'll plan to present at each of those meetings. Thank you, Mayor.
Thank you. Let me just interject that, of course, with each meeting, there will be an opportunity to review retroactively, obviously. Also, today's agenda topics, as they're listed, are likely going to be done out of order. So I think we're going to, Evan, you're going to put the contributions up early so that those that have real jobs can go to work afterwards and not have to stay around. Evan, take it away.
Sure. Thank you, Mayor, Commissioners, members of the public. We are very happy to be in front of you today to present the first draft of the annual fiscal year 2024 budget for the city of Rehoboth Beach. It is a balanced budget, and it is our largest budget that the city has ever had. Total budget so far is $35,424,934. That includes a capital budget, which is our largest capital budget, of $10,512,000. That exceeds last year's capital budget by roughly $4 million. There is just a couple highlights I wanted to address that are included within the budget. There is a 3% increase for city employees. We've also included in there the traffic and parking study that has been discussed at a few of the commissioner meetings. We have the continuation of our ADA transition plan, development and update, as well as our establishing the city's parking program as it relates to Americans with Disabilities Act. We also have included in there an update to the classification and compensation study that was done back in 2018 and adopted or pursued in 2019. And then finally included in there as well, which we wanted to mention, was a stormwater management plan for the city. Again, just to recap some of the departments and accounts that we will focus on today, I would like to focus on just these departments. So they, again, include the contributions, general fund revenue, mayor and commissioners, treasurers, admin, aldermen, information technology, building and licensing, parking meter and parking permits, parks and recreation, and then finally we can end on the Canal dock as well. Please bear with us as we go through this budget. There's over 1,000 expense accounts and over 200 revenue accounts, so it can be difficult to recall every charge within each account. So just preface with that. And I can answer any questions there are at this time. If there are no questions, we can start with the contributions.
Quick question. You mentioned the traffic study and the comp and class study. Can you, as you go through, will you highlight where those are outlined? Is that CIP
I absolutely
or is that
will.
within departmental?
Operating budget. Yeah.
Thanks.
So first, I know Main Street is here to present their request. So if you'd like, we can start with Main Street.
Mayor, Commissioners, staff, and public, thank you for having us. I'm going to call up Dan Slagle, our Executive Director, and Jerry Philbin, one of our officers. We would like to take a few minutes to make a short presentation. Please interrupt us with appropriate questions as we go forward. I'm really honored to have just come into this role as president of the board of Rehoboth Beach Main Street. I'm just a couple of weeks into it, so kind of a novice still and feeling my way. However, I'm very excited to come into an organization in this role that has really been doing well the last several years. We are very grateful for the support from the city of Rehoboth Beach for the last number of years. It's critical that this funding comes to us, but you'll note that we are not asking for an increase. We're asking for the same amount that we have asked for 3 years in a row, despite the fact that our organization is growing, and therefore, as we grow, expenses grow, and inflation hits us, and therefore the costs go up. We are finding new and interesting and exciting ways to raise funds, to grow our membership, and to bring in additional external resources through grants and so on. So we're going to touch on a little bit of that right now. But it's critical that you all hear how grateful we are from the past support. What we have had embedded in the agenda are 3 items. One, a summary of our annual budget for the calendar year 2023, a letter of transmittal that really lays out in kind of 5 categories who we are, what we're doing, the direction that we're going, and then 20 slides that we're going to go through very quickly. We know that you can all study these on your own, and I assume, having been at this podium before, that I know we all do our homework before we get here, and that you're all well-versed in this. However, we will move through it. So, but with that said, I'm going to call on Dan Slagle to start this off, our Executive Director.
Thank you. Good morning, Mayor. Good morning, Commissioners.
Morning.
Just thank you for listening to us today. I wanted to talk a little bit. My name is Dan Slagle. I'm the Executive Director of Rehoboth Main Street, and it's going on 4 years now. I'm very proud. We have grown like crazy. I'm really excited. We have a lot of volunteers. I want to talk about a little bit who we are. We are a volunteer-driven nonprofit organization dedicated to supporting residents and business. So also what we are, a local organization accredited by National Main Street. What that means is that we're able to help the businesses downtown get grants and help out other organizations by an accredited Main Street. There's about 5 accredited Main Streets in Delaware. So we're very proud to be one of them. We do a lot of homework to get that accreditation. Okay, again, I'm the Executive Director, Dan Slagle. Our membership has grown since I've started. We started off about 29 members, business members, and now we're up to about 164 as 2022. We are volunteer committee members. We're very excited about the RBMS volunteers. Last year, this is extremely important, 5,065 total volunteer hours. That is huge. That is showing that we have volunteers that want to help Main Street and help downtown Rehoboth and the residents. Also, we have a part-time office assistant. We're very proud. Here is Linda. She has helped out a lot. When you walk in, you're greeted with a smile. We give out a lot of information, and Linda's there to assist you. She's our part-time assistant. I'm very proud of. Also, we have a paid social media contractor. Our contractor is on top of everything going on downtown. We don't only promote Rehoboth Main Street events. He promotes the entire Rehoboth with the chamber, anything going on with Clear Space. He promotes everything downtown because that's what we're here for downtown. Okay, I'm going to turn it over to Dick now.
Thank you, Dan. We are governed by a board of directors. We have the usual officers, the photos of our current 12 board members are here. We just added 13th yesterday in my first board meeting as president. We brought on one of the local business owners, Mike, who is owner of Above the Dunes, is coming on. We are open to folks, whether they live in town or not, to volunteer for us, whether it's as a board member or in a number of other categories. However, one of my priorities is to try to increase the number of local residents and local business owners, local business managers on our board, so that because our focus is entirely from the boardwalk to the canal and only our downtown area. A number of our board members are here. If you would just wave your hand this morning. Thank you for your support. Our assistant treasurer is here, and Linda, our office assistant. Who's flipping? Are you flipping the slides here?
There he is.
Okay. Promotions and events are a huge part of what we do. That is the way that we promote downtown to our residents and to our visitors. You can see on the next slide an extensive list of citywide events by season. We have our hands in every one of these events in a variety of capacities, but it's ongoing weekly, the number of things that you can see that we get involved in. Some very involved, and some we simply advertise and promote. But it is year-round, and that's what keeps our downtown flourishing and our residents happy with a thriving and prosperous downtown. If we go on to the next page, you can see some of our showcase events that truly are Rehoboth Beach Main Street events. The Meatball Showdown, which takes place in March every year, very popular, exciting. We go into the Gumbo Crawl. We already have a date designated for the Gumbo Crawl this year. That'll be brought up by Dan in a few minutes. Very, very popular. We sell out every year. 1,000 tickets are sold, and it's almost by the time we announce those tickets, they're gone within days. We do that in coordination with the Purple Parrot Restaurant. The Oldies Dance will take place in May here at our convention center, a very popular fundraising event, but also it brings the community together, and it supports Rehoboth in Bloom. On to the next page. Speaking of Rehoboth in Bloom, you're all familiar with our planters. The planters are multiplying. We had 93 on the streets this year, all maintained 100% by volunteers. 70 volunteers take care of those 93 planters. We're adding 4 more in the summer of 2023. We also now are dealing with 3 garden areas in the city, the one around the farmer's market, the one around the circle near the bandstand, and then our newest one that is still in development, which is on the south side of the museum. You'll note that that's in progress. Those dollars came from Senator Lopez, one of his kind of outgoing signs of friendship to us as a city. He gave us $17,000 so that we could install that garden, and it'll be completed in the early spring. On to the next page. This year, for the first time, we recognize the long-standing businesses in our community. A very impressive list. If you look at how many of our businesses have been here for 25-plus years, there's also a list of those that have been here 50-plus years and 75. You know, we often are criticized by this turnover of businesses, and yet we fail to always see how many have been here for a long, long, long time. And so we recognize those. We're going to continue to do that on a regular basis. Cottage and Town Awards is an annual award program for both our residents and our businesses. And several of you were at that program this year, and we thank you for your participation. On to the next. Just this fall and early winter, we had the first ever fashion show here in the convention center. It brought together much of our public to showcase all of our retail establishments that sell clothing and accessories. It gave them a wonderful opportunity to promote their merchandise. That'll be an event that'll take place again. We're looking for the next one to take place in the spring of 2024. We have developed a self-walking tour. There's an app that one can spend only $10 on, get it on your phone, and wander through the city and get told wonderful stories and history about the city of Rehoboth Beach. On to the next slide. We just had the Wreaths Across America program where we honored our veterans that have been laid to rest. This happens nationwide in over 300 venues across the country. We are fortunate, the mayor helped us kick that off with some inspiring words. We had local politicians, but most importantly, we placed several hundred wreaths on the grave sites of our veterans. A very moving and inspiring program that Main Street, along with the Rehoboth Beach Homeowners Association, has sponsored. Community Unity Dinner was highly successful on December 4th. That program will continue. That brings together hundreds and hundreds of our residents annually at the holiday time. And then we had the Holiday Stroll program on Saturday, December 10th, where many businesses were involved, and we had Santa Claus and Mrs. Santa and several other of our Christmas characters wandering downtown with music and so on to inspire people to get involved in shopping downtown for the holidays. Dan?
What we like to do is we like to improve our communication. It's a two-way communication between the city, residents, businesses, and visitors. As you can see here, in response to the city CDP guidance, we want to make sure that the word is getting out, the comment through social media, online newsletters. We also host monthly RBHOA meetings at the RBMS, which we do now. I do participate in those meetings, attend Board of Commissioner meetings, and make presentations when requested. Expanded office hours now that we have Linda on board, again, to have walkthroughs, and also we have the diorama here at the RBMS office, which is very popular to the public, and with Paul Lovett presenting, the history of Rehoboth in 1910, about 1910 with Rehoboth. So that's really important to have that two-way communication. We will continue to improve. We have created an ambassador program. It's really important in 2022 to have an outreach. So our board members, our volunteers will walk into the businesses, also meet with the residents to see what we could do better and what they need from us. So we created the ambassador program because as we grow, kind of one person, so we want everyone to get out and reach everyone. The ambassador, I'm sorry. This is important too. Sometimes you learn and sometimes you win. The need to better promote retail business, we created the Downtown on the Avenue Fashion Show. Importance of gathering an executive director out of the office to interact with businesses. We're hiring a part-time, I would say, assistant for myself, where they're in the office answering emails, answering any questions from the public. So we're working on that, working towards that. More aggressively using social media to interact with awareness of downtown Rehoboth, of what is going on. Because I get a lot of calls from the public, what is exactly going on? When are events? So it's important to use our social media to expand that. RBS membership has grown. Again, that's why we created the ambassador program. Okay, promoting downtown business through our monthly newsletter. I have to say I'm very, very proud of our newsletter. We have an open rate of around 60% or above on our newsletter. So it has piqued the interest. We try to make it very informative of what is going on in downtown Rehoboth. Again, about events, volunteer of the month we present. So our newsletter is, if you get a chance, I hope everyone receives our newsletter to review it. Okay, this is a lot of the businesses that have signed on with Main Street. We're all about dining, shopping, the experience of staying in Rehoboth. So I'm really proud to present this to you of a lot of the members that have signed on that believe in Main Street, that they believe we can promote the downtown for them. And also with the residents, that's very important to provide information to the residents of what is offered downtown. The 5 top things, folks, are about living in Rehoboth. We hear a lot of it's because of the ocean, of course, the beach, the restaurants, residents friendly, shopping, and it's safe. These are the top 5 things we hear a lot of. Words used by the residents to describe downtown Rehoboth: pleasant, proud, convenient, welcoming. Our downtown business is currently under the lure of Route 1 as an option. Our goal is to assist the business community to maintain a lifestyle for the residents and visitors to come and enjoy.
Jerry Philbin's going to go through the next couple of slides on our 2023 budget. Jerry?
Thank you, Dick. Thank you, Mr. Mayor and Commissioners. You're looking at the projected expense budget for 2023, and just a couple of things that I want to point out. The budget is a balanced budget, and the budget is essentially at the same level as it was last year overall. As Dick has mentioned, the ask that we are coming to the city for is for the same amount that we made last year. Worth noting is that the relative percentage of this pie chart is larger on salary and benefits, and it's because we're proposing bringing on another part-time assistant to work in the office. And the reason for that is because we noticed that when we have Dan out pressing the flesh with business owners and with residents of the city, our membership goes up. Last year, our membership rose 32%. We think a lot of that was because Dan had time out of the office where he could be meeting and greeting and helping to explain to people what it is exactly Main Street does. So we are proposing to bring on another half-time assistant. I want to move on to the next slide, which is the income budget. Of course, as Dick has also said, we're very grateful to the city for the contribution that you make to our general operation. On top of the donation that we're asking for today, we also want to recognize that you also give Main Street an in-kind donation of the space we occupy and the utilities that keep the lights on. So thank you very much for that. Just noting that if you look at the pie chart, the revenue from memberships and the city's donation are about the same at approximately 30% each. At about 40% is everything else, which is events, donations, grants that we receive in order to support the mission. Again, overall, the budget is balanced, and we've tried very hard to contain costs for our members as well. Our membership rates this year are the same as last year. Thank you.
These are some of the goals for 2022 versus accomplishments. New social media hire, Google advertising, also increased resident focus, events on promotions, fashion show, historical walking tour, and our community unity. We also increase grant and other financial opportunities is always ongoing. We're always looking for grant opportunities. Enhance assistance to downtown businesses. This year, we have someone on our committee that gives you tax advice, so that will help out our business owners. So in addition, a financial advisor to the EV committee, in addition of a free notary service to our members this year. So provide one-to-one liaisons to each business member, and again, institute our ambassador program, initiate. Okay, you want to come up? So this is the downtown experience. We're asking at this time for any questions, comments.
Thank you all very much. We got 2 notes here. One is either for Evan and or you all, and that is for those in-kind things that are given to you, the free rent, I guess, and maybe water, utilities. Has there any dollar valuation been put on those?
There has been, and I don't have it in front of me right now, but our audit report has a footnote where we disclose that. We've been disclosing that for the last 2 years. So, but I'm sorry, I would have to pull that report to give you the number.
Okay, for the next meeting, if you would. Just out of curiosity, we want to know the total value of what we're contributing if you will. The other is kind of maybe a new question for each agency that I want to ask. I'm just curious if you have any kind of given any thought to a strategic plan that if you don't get the funding or you don't get the max amount of funding, do you have an alternative program?
Well, but we certainly don't take this donation for granted. And we've worked very hard to squeeze as much out of our budget as we can. And you can see by the number of volunteers that we utilize with very minimal staff that we are getting a lot done. But directly in answer to your question, Mr. Mayor, we kind of freeze up a little bit when we start thinking of trying to go forward without the $60,000 that you've been providing. It is critical. We feel that this partnership between Rehoboth Beach Main Street, the residents, the businesses, city government is really critical to the overall balance of having a prosperous and a successful city. And so we really don't want to imagine going forth without it, but we also don't want to take it for granted. That's why we work very hard to make sure that we are earning kind of every penny of that in terms of our accomplishments. It is something we probably need to be more strategic on, like you said, in our strategic planning. But we also feel that if this funding were not here, if this contribution were not here, it would hurt the entire city, not just our organization, but it would affect our business community, it would affect our residential community in negative kinds of ways.
Very, very good. Thank you very much. Turn it over to the commissioners. Commissioner Sharp.
I want to dovetail a little bit on what the mayor just brought up, but before I do that, I'm astounded by the increase in your membership. I looked at my notes from our last year's budget meeting, and Dan, when you were asked about what your goal was, it was a 20% increase. And I think what I just heard is you had a 32% increase in your membership, which I think is outstanding and well congratulated. Especially, we have a lot of vitality in our downtown area, and we keep plugging away at that. But one of the things I'm curious about, and we did talk about it last year, is where you're going, because I don't yet see it in the presentation. We talked about it last year on economic development. And the things that we talked about were the possibility of or the things that are often brought up by residents in the city is bakery, pharmacy, dry cleaners. And I know we've made some.
We do have a bakery.
Yes, I know. Yes. Yes, Dick, just a minute. We do have a bakery. And what I'm curious about when the mayor talks about a strategic plan, I think the straight answer at the moment is no. Just, you don't have one. But I think one of the things that would be very helpful would be to have more meat around what is the approach, or is there an approach to economic development?
And I can tell you right now, Steve is our chair for the EV committee, and our goal is to meet with the landlords, the owners of the buildings, who's bringing everyone in town, when they're renting out their building. So we want to meet with them and see what the needs are. So that's our goal this year, is really to meet with more of the landlords, the owners of the buildings, to say what our need is.
Yeah, and let me just add, I mean, you make a very good point, Commissioner Sharp, and I've learned in short order, and I guess I had learned this over the years, that many of our landlords are absentee landlords. They are not in the businesses. They are not necessarily living here. In fact, many live a long ways away when you look at the mail list. And we do mail them. We get very little response when we ask for information, when we ask for feedback, and we ask for how can we partner better, how can we strategize better. So it's a real challenge to get their attention. And some of that came up very, very recently when we had the turnover of one business that's been here for a long time, Seashell Shop, that decided to aggregate their business on the highway where they're already located, and because they put out the story that they suddenly got a raise. Well, the truth is, they had known about this for several months. On the other hand, it came as a shock to everyone because they've been a mainstay on Rehoboth Avenue. And so that said to us, again, we really need to find a way to help communication between the business owners, managers, and those that own, in other words, are renting that property. But it is a real challenge to get their attention. The good news, of course, is that another business immediately indicated that they would move into that.
So is it reasonable for me to expect, because I'll be looking back next year on what we talked about in 2023 and what we talked about in 2022. So is it reasonable for me to expect that when we see slides, or when I see slides about accomplishments and goals for the future, that economic development will or will not be included?
Economic vitality is one of our 6 ongoing committees. And so we have a group working diligently at that. So yes, if you want more detail now or partway through the year or in a year from now, we will be more than happy to provide you with their work plan and with what they're accomplishing.
I think that would be great, because I realize how important the contribution is, and at the same time, having to balance that with resident expectations.
Of course.
So you're doing a great job. Rehoboth in bloom. Can't wait for spring, for everything to start manifesting and putting some balanced, I guess, emphasis on paper about economic development would be helpful, so people can see it, they can understand it. When you pull up the presentation on our support document, once something is embedded in there, I think it just gives it a little bit more prominence.
Right.
So thank you for that.
Thank you, Commissioner. Appreciate that.
Thank you. Any other commissioners? Commissioner Bennett?
Yes, a couple of questions. I guess it's related to development as well. Do you guys work directly with the chamber?
We do. We feel that we have a good working relationship and partnership with the chamber. Our missions are somewhat different.
Right.
Our geography is dramatically different. They have the entire zip code, so much of their focus is up and down Route 1 and all of those, many large businesses, whereas we are right here, city only.
I just wonder, because we all seem to, and I mean all collectively, we all seem to get dinged about downtown with development, as Commissioner Sharp and the mayor brought up. And I understand there's the landlord issues and a lot of things we can't control. So I was glad to see that you added development to this year's goals. Dan, you would mention that I guess Main Street, the national organization, can assist in getting grants. Have we received any, or have there been any businesses that have received any?
We have received grants, and what's nice is the National Main Street Conference I do attend to find out what main streets are doing downtown, to gather more information to help us, succeed. But yes, we have received grants for that.
Would you mind advising what some of those grants are used for?
Is this state of Delaware?
Are they for the sign program, the facade program?
The sign grant, we give out about 5 grants a year for the signage. Also, grants to help out downtown. As far as Rehoboth in Bloom, we try to help them out too. So that's some of what we've done.
But if you were a business, so if I wanted to go into business and I needed some maybe rental assistance, do they do that sort of thing as well? Does the Main Street National assist in that sort of economic help?
We've actually had more luck trying to find grant money for those purposes in organizations like AARP. And as best we can, we pass on information about grant opportunities that are available to for-profit businesses to our members, because that's the list we have. Just as a reminder, of course, 2 years ago, we wrote the grant proposals that funded the sidewalk barriers for sidewalk dining, and that had to come together very fast, and we had to work very effectively with the city to do that, so we do it, but more of what we do is to pass on information about grants for for-profits to businesses themselves.
Okay.
And I have offered to give grant writing assistance to the business members.
Thank you. And one more question, and you might not, this might not be a fair answer, but, or a fair question, but I just want to say it. I'm familiar with a number of the other Main Street organizations across the country. You guys seem to do an awful lot more from an event standpoint. And do you need them? Do you need to be part of Rehoboth? Do you need to be part of Main Street? Could you do this on your own, as your own organization?
We could do it on our own, but it's great to be part of a national Main Street. Just they keep us informed of what's going on across the country, what is going on economically. Also, they provide a lot of tools for us to help us grow.
Okay.
You know, a lot of information and.
So you found value in that
I
then? Okay.
definitely find value in it.
All right, thank you.
Dan, perhaps you could describe the specifics of the state money that we're receiving.
Yes.
Also.
We're also receiving from the state of Delaware, the Small Business Association, $2,500 every quarter to help for our social media to promote downtown. In return, I have to provide information to the state of Delaware, this SBA, that I am doing my job in the part of promoting downtown, social media. I'm out on the streets getting new businesses. It's all about promoting downtown, and they're giving us that grant, and I did receive that.
So what's your, I guess a follow-up to that then, what's your biggest challenge or frustration?
Trying to get more and more grants, you know. It's also, you know, we want to have that money available to, for downtown to help Main Street grow. So that is sometimes is a challenge, you know.
Thank you.
Thank you. Anybody else? Commissioner?
I had one question.
Commissioner Markert, and then Jay, and then
Oh, do you want that
Patrick.
first?
Okay,
Go ahead. I'm sorry.
I think it's probably the best 60,000 we spend. I don't know how you make it on 200K. I just can't see how you do all the things that you do. So, yeah, oh yeah. And Rehoboth and Bloom is paramount. I mean, I just can't believe all the stuff that they do. When I was first sworn in a long time ago, Commissioner Mills and Commissioner Gossett and Commissioner Sharp, Main Street was in the beginnings of their death throes. And we were really, it was a serious situation. The change from then till now is stunning to me, absolutely stunning. And I just want you to keep doing what you're doing. Go ahead. Excuse me, go ahead, Dick.
Yeah. Let me just comment on that, and thank you, Commissioner. You know, we all know that when one of us succeeds, we can all succeed. And I think, you know, it's not only the work ethic of our volunteers, but it's also the attitude that we bring toward this, that we're part of this balance in this small community of ours, the balance between residents, businesses, visitors, and all that goes on, and that all need to thrive for one to thrive. And so I think that's part of what brought us out of the kind of the depths. As you say, we're also fortunate enough to get a wonderful executive director. But you know, this attitude that you know, working together, communicating, being transparent, team effort is really critical as we go forward to do this.
Thanks, Dick. I agree totally, and we just got to keep it up.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Commissioner Barkert?
Yeah, I just have one question. I want to know what is the challenge for you for those businesses in Rehoboth that are reluctant to join your organization? What does it take for you to
Repeat the question, if you
overcome
would.
that?
Repeat the question.
Yeah.
What my challenge is for promoting Rehoboth Beach to the businesses?
Yeah.
Is that what you?
Well,
yeah,
for the
yeah.
ones that aren't currently.
That aren't currently. You know, for me, it's building that relationship. And that's why we've grown and speaking out what Main Street can offer as far as events and promoting your business downtown and promoting the entire downtown. I think the challenge is just make sure we get that word across and prove it. And I have to prove and show them that we can do this, and that's what's happening. You know, when you build that relationship with them, I feel as though that I can provide what they're looking for. And that's why we have different levels of memberships that we provide. We have the basic until, you know, it's promoting that business advertising. They want to see that. And usually when they see that, then they sign up again or renewal. So that is more or less the challenge, just to prove to them we can do what we say.
Okay, thank you.
You know, it's clear that particularly our smaller businesses are still coming out of kind of the COVID environment and are still struggling. And so some of those that are not members, Bunky, it's because their margins are so tight still. And they're, you know, they're open to tell us that, and we have to understand that. On the other hand, you know, we're trying to convince them how, you know, we can help their situation also.
Okay,
Yeah.
all right.
Thank you.
Thank you. Commissioner Gossett?
Yeah, thank you very much. Again, the progress that you've made is overwhelming, and congratulations on that. Could you just expand a little bit on that membership level categories? I'm just curious of cost, or not necessarily the benefits, but just the levels that you have.
We have anywhere from $175 up to a $2,000 member.
And those
You
are
know,
annual fees?
Yes.
Okay,
Yes.
great.
And you'll, as you saw on the slides here, there are different levels of the membership. You know, we've also given free services to as far as a notary. That's for everyone. So even though there's different levels, we do offer many free off.
Well, and that's metamorphosed over the years because many years ago, there was free membership, I think.
Right.
Yeah.
We feel as though having a skin in the game, as you would say, we want to, when people put their dollars into it, this is what we want back. So it's nice that they want to be a part of Main Street and downtown. And we utilize those dollars to, again, for our social media promoting and giving Rehoboth and Bloom many different options.
Patrick?
And there was mention about the grant opportunities with the sign and awning grants, what have you. You know, the city's in the process now of updating or creating the code to address the canopy signs and marquees and what have you. So I don't know if that would be an opportunity for Main Street to work with the city on applications, so that this will require some of the businesses to restyle or redo their signage. So that may be an opportunity. You can use that also to foster more grants throughout the city.
I totally agree, you know, and it's good that they have to meet those guidelines before we'd even give them a grant. So work with the city is important, that they meet those guidelines.
Or do outreach to them to
Exactly.
let them know this is coming, type of thing.
And that's part of their membership package too, you know.
Also, is your board made up of certainly wonderful individuals, but are they representational of any of the segments of the community, such as landlords or business owners or restaurants or retail or anything of that nature? Or how is your board made up of?
I think that, going back to a challenge, it has been a challenge to get more of the business owners on our board because of lack of help and the commitment. You know, I'm excited to have Mike on from Above the Dunes, and we've had a few in the past where they had to leave because they just didn't have the help, you know, or the time or commitment. Because it's very important to build our board to be a diverse board. So, yes.
So the board is not created with segments like you have two seats for landlords or something of that nature. It's just as you are able to get people to volunteer and participate. Thank you.
Thank you. Anybody else?
I just have a quick final question. Since you did so well on growing the membership, what is your growth membership goal for 2023? It was 20% previously. So what's your goal?
I would like to reach 200 businesses for this coming year. That would be my goal. We're at around 160 now, and I'd like to hit 200.
Great, thank you.
We do an annual performance standard for our executive director, as you know, all organizations do, and that is written right into the goals that.
And that would be about 25%.
Yeah, I'm sorry, 25.
Thank you.
The accountants vote. Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, okay.
So, again, Mayor and Commissioners, thank you so much for your past support.
Any other questions?
If not, we thank you very much. I will make a comment that I'm pleased to see that you're not asking for any more money, but I feel comfortable with maintaining the course. However, this is the infancy of looking at our budget. We want to look at it in thoroughness over the next month or two, and we'll make a determination some point on what we're going to do with you.
Before April 1, anyway. Right?
Yeah, yes, absolutely. Before April Fool's Day, yes.
Thank you.
All right, thank you very much. Evan, turn it back to you, sir.
Thank you, Mayor. And I'll just note
Oh,
that.
let me ask something. Is everybody okay with the temperature in here?
Yeah.
Okay, maybe I'm cold because I don't have any warm bodies next to me. I don't know.
Thank you again, Mayor. So I will just note that within the contribution section of the budget, we have included a $60,000 contribution to Main Street. So that is included within the budget that is before you today.
Thank you.
Next, we can go to the Rehoboth Beach Historical Society. I believe Nancy Alexander is here, and we have the support documents that she provided to us displayed on the screen.
Good morning, everyone.
Morning.
Good morning, Nancy.
Hi. Should I just go ahead and start?
Yes, just introduce yourself and do your thing.
Sure, do my thing. My name is Nancy Alexander, and I'm the director of the Rehoboth Beach Historical Society and Museum. Happy to report that as of November, I'm celebrating my 15th year of directing the society. I think my daughter was 6 when she started. She's about to graduate college, so it's been a wonderful experience. First of all, I want to thank the city for its ongoing and consistent support over the years. We do occupy a city building. We have done over $1 million in leasehold improvements on that building, which I'll mention in a little bit. We care for over 3,000 items in our collection, and they range from ashtrays from hotels in the 1960s to an original document talking about the founding of Rehoboth City, which we now know sort of as South Rehoboth / Dewey Beach. The items in our collection are absolutely reflective of more than 150 years of having fun at the beach. And it is my privilege to have people share their memories, their objects. We have over 1,000 postcards in the collection. We've got some exciting news about that coming up as well. So I feel that it is my privilege to take care of the documents and the items that embody the memories of people enjoying their time in Rehoboth Beach. It's a special town. We all know that. And it's a privilege to do that. We have exhibits, we have programs, we have online programs, we have in-person walking tours. The museum itself is open to the public. So there are many facets of doing what we do, including a lot of behind-the-scenes work in the collection. Many people in our research library working on our computer system to catalog what we have, because we do get frequent research requests. So if someone asks about when did parking start? Who were some past directors of parking? How long has the city had a city manager? All of those questions. We can do a little bit of a deep dive, find out what that's all about. I also want to thank the city. This year's been an exciting year. For 18 months from start to finish, the process of acquiring the Dolly sign, which is actually part of the collection, was just a joy from start to finish. And one of the reasons that project was successful was the cooperation of the city. From talking to the business owner to talking with the city, coordinating, taking the sign down, storing that sign for us while I raised the money. Pleased to say that more than 100 people contributed to the project of acquiring and installing that sign. People from Arizona, people from almost every state in the union who don't live here anymore or who have visited once and loved it. Just that was a project that captured the memories of a lot of people. So we did add more than 100 additional donors to our donor rolls because of that project. Police, parking, storage, it's a great welcome to the city. We were pleased that it's not our building, it's the city's building. But I was just, that day when we hung that sign was just absolutely fantastic. One of the highlights of my entire nonprofit career. We have done leasehold improvements to the building. I recently raised $120,000. We were told that we have 2 air conditioning systems, HVAC systems for the building, because it's a large building. It used to be the ice house in town. And we were told that it had a shelf life of a few more years. We renovated the second floor, opened the museum up, enjoyed 1 year, hit COVID, and then the air conditioning system died, which if you have 3,000 objects in your care, humidity is a clear problem. So over the course of just one summer, we installed dehumidifiers and emptied more than 600 gallons of water just to keep the building somewhat in range of humidity levels. Knowing that we can't continue that way, I raised $120,000 for a new HVAC system. So I was happy when that system got switched on and I didn't have to empty dehumidifiers anymore. It was a great day. Our number of visitors this year, it's our best year ever in 15 years. We're using 2019 as a comparative because obviously 2020 and 2021 are not good years to measure visitorship. In 2019, we had just about 5,000 visitors. In 2022, we had 6,622 visitors. So the number of people utilizing the museum building is growing. People are coming back out. They want to come into the museum, and they just have a great time when they come in. This year, we're going to be doing a number of events celebrating the 150th anniversary of the founding of the Rehoboth Camp Meeting Association. For those of you who don't know, this town was originally founded as a camp meeting association, a Methodist camp meeting association where they had revival-type meetings from sunrise to sunset. That was 150 years ago this month. We're going to be doing a number of programs to celebrate that, including an exhibit. We have increased our online presence with Zoom programs. Of course, everybody switched into that mode during COVID. We have found that people who are from Potomac, Maryland, Florida, whatever it may be, when they're not here, they're thinking about being here. And when we do our online programs, they love being able to sign on to a Zoom program. They love being part of what we're doing. So one thing that we are doing is looking at hybrid programming, doing both in-person and online at the same time. So maybe someone from the city could help us work a little bit on our AV system to make that happen. Other big news, we've increased our accessibility dramatically. In terms of our oral histories, which are really just a precious part of our collection, we have audio and video recorded oral histories with people who've grown up here, people who've lived here, people who've made an impact. So we've made a concerted effort to increase the number of voices we represent from both the LGBTQ community and the African American community. The vitality of the African American community here over the years has just been incredible. We're gathering information about African American owned businesses, all kinds of things. One incredible collection. It's huge and we've got to move through it. We have over 1,000 letters from Mr. Malloy. What's now the Short Inn was an African American owned motel and cabins that were in the Green Book. And Mr. Malloy wrote over 1,000 letters back to his wife when he was in World War II. And we have pictures, we have ledgers from the motel, we have all kinds of things. And it's a snapshot of time. And while that's not within the city limits, at one point, the entrance to the city ran straight through the other side of the canal. That was Route 14. And so we're actually even considering contacting the Smithsonian to tell them that we have this collection. I mean, it's unparalleled in those terms. Increasing accessibility, we do ASL guided tours. We have an app on the iPad where if you hold it up to one of our panels with text, it will read that text to someone who is sight impaired. We're increasing our children's programs and have hired a new education person, very, very part-time, to schedule senior visits. She takes things out to senior citizen centers, all kinds of things. So the demand for our content is growing, our accessibility is growing, and we are increasing the diversity of the offerings that we hold. I thank you so much. It's a joy to do my job. Thank you.
Thank you, Nancy. I have 3 questions I'll start off with. At the time I went with your president, David Main, up on the roof to cite the Dolly sign, there was leaking at that time.
Mm-hmm.
And my recollection is that when the HVACs were going to be changed, that was going to be the time you addressed the leaking. Are there any roof leaks that need attention, or has that been resolved?
There continue to be minor roof leaks. They are not specifically in the collections area, thank goodness. We are really, really trying to find a roofing company that will even come out and give us a bid. I mean,
So the answer is yes, you still
we're-
got some.
we still have
remnant.
some, yeah, so we are very much addressing it. And then the collections are actually covered in plastic still.
All right. And then my new generic question to all the agencies, have you all thought of a strategic plan if a part of the funding was not realized?
Sure, that's always in the back of our minds, especially when we're budgeting. We try, our goal is to make the history as accessible as we possibly can to everyone. We take donations, we do not take admission. I made that flip a long time ago because I saw families, 2 adults, 2 kids, 1 in a stroller, come up to the door. They originally had admission, and those families left. I sit right inside. I'm at the front desk quite frequently. And they would walk away because, you know, you're trying to have a vacation. We find that those families now come in. They do make a donation. My favorite thing, I hate to digress, but my favorite thing is when the parents give the children a couple of dollars and the children come up to the desk and put the donation in the donation jar. We're building a generation of people who are appreciating history and appreciating museums. We also, especially we take donations for the programs. We can start charging a fee. We don't charge anything. There's no paid portal through which people have to come to access our online programs. We could make that change. We could limit our hours. We're open 7 days a week in the summer. We're busy every day.
Very good. And are you getting anybody stopping in thinking you're the Dolly store?
We've cataloged it. We've had 17 requests for taffy.
All right. Thank you.
I'll
Open
get
this
to
to
the
the commissioners. Commissioner Sharp?
I just have a clarification for all the good work that y'all do at the, actually, I have 2 questions. To dovetail again on the mayor's question, Nancy, as far as a real strategic plan, I'm going to have to check the boxes no.
Oh, actually, we have someone in line. We have a meeting next week. We are going to hire someone to work on a strategic plan with us, and it's someone who's worked in museums before.
So
that
that'll be
process is beginning January 30th.
Oh, that's perfect.
Yeah, I mean, we planned on doing this for a long time, but, you know, COVID.
And the other thing, I was looking at your P&L. As far as auctions are concerned,
Okay.
are y'all still doing those?
Well, we have a silent auction at the beach ball fundraiser.
Right.
We don't auction off, collections are not auctioned off unless there's a specific process for doing that.
But I seem to recall, I guess what I'm trying to ask is when you did the online auction during the pandemic.
Right.
I'm trying to remember, that was in place of.
In place of, yes.
But you don't see a need or an opportunity to have that as part of your routine? Like
You mean to continue to do an online auction?
to raise money?
Yes, we did not raise as much money because it's not the same feeling. We had our annual beach ball this year, and oh my gosh, it was a smash hit, and it was wonderful. And then part of sharing history is sharing it with other people in the room. And being there all together, the fellowship, the memories shared. We had a fantastic time at the beach ball. Everybody please come to the beach ball. It's really fun. There were no assigned seats, and if you wear a tie, we tell you to go home. We make you take it off. It is just a fun, casual event that raises a great deal of money for our organization, and there's a silent auction there that does quite well.
No doubt, no doubt. I've had a couple of people who are no longer, due to their age and their health condition, able to did attend in the past, and they have asked, well, do you think that the Historical Society will have something for us online?
That's excellent input. Let me talk to our fundraising committee about that.
Because I have to be perfectly honest, I had the pleasure of writing a very large check during the pandemic.
Thank you.
You know, nothing else to do but, look online and spend money.
Right.
But that was a great opportunity. So maybe it could be an enhancement. I don't know how labor intensive they are.
We could do a hybrid because we use the same company that we we have separate software for that auction, and in a nutshell, we could do that as an add-on. So we could do our traditional software, use of our software, and then we could do a small online auction. That's an outstanding suggestion.
Just food for thought as you
Sure.
move forward.
Great, thank
Thank
you.
you.
Thank you.
Anybody else?
Just to say thank you for the work you do. I know it's a labor of love in many ways, and to preserve the history of this great community of ours. Thank you. Question back actually to Evan. Could you also, as Mayor requested, could you give us a breakout for the electric and pest control that we do? And I also noticed on the budget itself, on page 25, we have a FY24 budget item for the Anna Hazard Museum of $25,000. What exactly is that comprised of, or the purpose of that?
Sure. So that includes, that is a price quote that we received for new cedar shingles for the roof at the Anna Hazard house. I believe what is on there now is asphalt. So we had some conversations with Nancy, and I think one of the things that we had considered was going to a cedar shake. So that is the quote that we've received for the cedar shake. We also have a quote for the asphalt, which is significantly less. So that was one of the items that we wanted to discuss with the commissioners today.
Great.
To see what route.
So just for clarification, the city owns both of those buildings, correct? The Ice
It was
House
maintained,
and Anna Hazard.
Yes, and I'll just add, the Anna Hazard is an original camp meeting tent house. And it does belong to the city. It was moved to Martin's Lawn, and we are increasingly using it during the season. In fact, we'll be using it during March to listen to audio oral histories by women for Women's History Month. So we're planning on trying to use it for the bulk of the year, dramatically increase our use of that. And thank you to the city. The city did do some repairs to that building for us, and extremely, extremely grateful. Thank you.
Any other commissioners? Commissioner Jay?
And that 1976 contract for the Anna Hazard is still in effect. Is that correct? Okay with it. I continue to be impressed at how they can run the museum on $285,000. I just cannot, it's just amazing that they can do that. And having attended the board meetings, their fundraising fallback is a constant topic. I mean, it's constant. So they have plans. It's just a constant topic, and I think they certainly deserve the extra $30,000 for repairs contract and expenses that are unique. And so that's my last comment.
Well, Commissioner Legree is the liaison between the commissioners and the museum, so you've got an extra intimate knowledge of them. So we thank you for serving in that position.
And may I also add, he's great at changing the light bulbs in the museum. Thank you, Jay.
Good. Has an expanded role. That's very good. Anything else up here among the commission? Evan, if you would, like you did last time, reiterate what the ask is.
Sure.
How much funding was put in this year's budget and how much they realized last year from
Sure.
us.
Thank you, Mayor. So the request for the fiscal year 2024 budget was $30,000, as indicated by Nancy. The current fiscal year budget, we had $37,500. So it is a decrease in their ask for this upcoming fiscal year. That $30,000 has been included within the budget that's before you today.
30,000. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Evan.
Yep.
Thank you, Nancy. We appreciate it. Go ahead, Evan.
Sure, thank you, Mayor. We also have contribution requests from the Rehoboth Beach Volunteer Fire Company as well as the library. They were unable to send representatives today, so the plan is to bring them before you all at the next budget meeting, which is scheduled again for Monday, February 6th at 2 p.m. There are support documents included within the agenda, which shows their requests as well as the budgets that they've provided. And just for your awareness, the fire company is requesting a donation of $150,000, which is the same as the previous request for the current fiscal year budget. And the library is again requesting $75,000, which is the same request from the current fiscal year budget. So both requests are flat, but they have put those requests in again for the upcoming fiscal year.
So you think it's prudent to wait to discuss these
Yes,
till
Mayor.
their representatives are in person? Okay, very good.
Just one point on clarification that, going back though, for FY '22, the request for the fire department was 100,000. We went from 100 to 150 last year. And the library in '22 was 30,000. We went from 30,000 to 75,000. So it's been a large bump for both of those.
Yes, that's correct. Yep.
Thank you.
Thank you.
And my memory agrees with Commissioner Gossett.
Yep. We're good. Next.
Thank you, Mayor. So next, what we'll go into is the general fund revenue. I will touch just briefly on several of the revenue accounts, and then Bert certainly is more intimate with these revenue accounts, more so than I am. So I will touch just on several of these revenue accounts, and then turn it over to Bert if he has anything he'd like to add, and then we can answer any questions you might have.
Thank you.
So starting off, I want to touch on some of the larger revenue accounts that we have. Property taxes is flat relatively because we know generally what we'll receive every year for those property taxes. Property transfer tax, we are starting to see a slowing of the market. So the transfer tax that we're starting to receive is declining. Our plan is to continue to monitor the transfer tax that we receive through February and then make a final determination. But our current proposal in the budget is to budget for about $1.2 million in property transfer tax. On rental tax, we have budgeted $2.9 million. The current fiscal year, we have just over $3 million, so we are somewhat conservative in that revenue, but we're comfortable at $2.9 million. Hotel accommodations tax, we have about $1.5 million, which is generally the revenue that we would expect for the accommodation tax that we have in place. So that is consistent with some of the revenue we've received in prior years. Next, I want to jump down to interest on transfer tax. That is account 408-130. You will see that we have $350,000 budgeted in that account. That is reflective of the interest earned on the investments we have made into treasury bills for that transfer tax account.
Did that all, that's transfer tax excess?
Correct.
Thank you.
So that's a specific fund that designates
Yes.
those?
Yep.
It's been, the treasury bills were divided into three areas. We used water and sewer funds that we had excess, and we wanted to keep those separate. It facilitates the accounting as far as not requiring us to allocate interest. We know exactly what each account is. So we have three separate accounts with Edward Jones.
Next, I will talk to the sale of property and supplies. That's account 409-100. You'll see that we had the large sale of Kent Street, so that accounts for the $1.2 million. And then we have budgeted $30,000. That's because we sell miscellaneous supplies at the city auction, and we tend to do pretty well, especially with old vehicles that we are selling that have been replaced. Next, I just want to briefly touch on grants other. That's account 480-110. That's reflective of some of the surface water grants that we tend to get every single year. We're pretty consistent at about $75,000. Those largely go towards stormwater projects, wastewater projects, and water projects. Next two lines I wanted to talk about is parking revenue. That's account 402-125 and 402-150. We have been somewhat conservative in a $3 million budget for revenue for both those accounts. You can see we were higher than that this past summer. Again, just trying to be a little bit conservative and budget accordingly. And that also is reflective of the increase that we went to with the $3 per hour.
Is revenue fairly split on pay by phone and credit card? I mean, you have it 3 each, but is that
Right.
generally about 50-50?
Yeah,
or-
it is. Mhm.
Thank you.
Next, I wanted to just briefly touch on parking permit sales. That's account 402-600. You'll see we were a bit conservative there at about $1,025,000. And then finally, on beach concessions, that's account 408-300. That number is reflective of the calendar fiscal year 2024 pricing per the contract that we have in place for the concessions. And that's everything I wanted to touch on. Bert, I didn't know if you want to add anything. Otherwise, we can answer any questions you might have on the revenue side.
No, I think you've covered most of the key points. If there,
A couple of spot questions, if I may. The 401-350, the building and licensing plan reviews dropped about 5,000 or 6,000. Are we just anticipating less applications, or 401-350?
Yeah, I'd have to look at the year-to-date actual. Looks like as of December, we had done about 23,000. So again, just trying to be a little bit conservative on that side.
And a couple lines down, Alderman's Court, is that the addition of this increase in that from 88 to 123? Is that the addition of the staff?
No, that would be just revenue in for the Alderman's Court. So we can take a look at that and maybe adjust that accordingly based on previous years.
What's your line number?
That was 404-100. And then just one down, 406-000, cable TV. Is that the Comcast contract? That's
correct.
And do you know, or could you let us know at some point, when is that renegotiated?
Yes.
Because that was originally a 10-year contract, wasn't it?
I think it was.
During Streetscape, so might have been renewed 5 years ago, maybe.
It may have been. My memory's lacking on that, so that's why I turned to the experts there.
one comment on the
Yeah.
cable contract. We've always had an exclusive contract with cable, and I do know that Bethany Beach has negotiated a contract with 2 providers. I don't know how that's going to work out, but they have brought Comcast in as well as MediaCom. So it's a consideration.
And let's see, one other, 408-160, COVID-19 grants,
408.
480-160. Do we expect COVID grants in '24?
Go ahead, Bert.
We've received that money,
We did.
but the accounting treatment of that is it could not be recognized because we haven't spent the money. So accounting standards want you to match grant money and grant expenditures in the same year. So we're going to spend it this year, but I had to
You just have to
recognize
account for it.
revenue. The cash is there already.
Good. Glad to know that. And then 480-610, the grant for Silver Lake evaluation, we had budgeted in '23. I don't know if we spent anything, but we've cut it in half to 25,000.
Yeah,
Is that
so-
based on an RFP, or?
Yes, that is based on the final reimbursement that we are expecting from DENREC for the grant that we received. It was a $50,000 grant. We already received half of that, $25,000 upfront, I want to say about a year ago. So we're expecting to receive that next fiscal year.
And next page, the 480-485 police pension allocation, that has jumped. Is that regarding the contract update with police, or is that the state pension?
Well, that goes back to, when they first started the joining the pension plan for
Right.
the state. And basically, it's money that they just simply send, whether they have an allocation methodology for all those participants. But we book what we receive. We don't really make requests.
So that figure comes from the state. I mean, that's not something we kind of forecast, if you will, or it's a predicated
No, but
number?
it hasn't gone down, and
Okay.
it tends to, go up slightly.
Okay. And I also noticed 481-1165 Beach Patrol Troop Fund, we're not forecasting there, or is that money being placed elsewhere, or just kind of what's up with that?
Well, I didn't forecast anything. I mean, last year, it was down, and I need to talk to the lifeguard captain, get some clarification on that. We may put a number in there next time, but, I didn't have anything to put in there. Didn't want to forecast it without input.
Okay, that's great. I was just curious that we certainly have supported them in the past, so I don't know. Just curious, that's all. Thank you, those are my questions.
Thank you, Patrick. If you notice line 105450, page 3, tennis courts, I just want to make note that maintenance or revenue is about 5,000, and I'll bring this up later when we look at what repaving costs are and maintenance costs are. And so let me bring it up later.
The revenue from the tennis court, that stream's changed a little bit over the years. We found that it was actually better for the city for us to have a professional tennis operator take over so essentially the revenue that we receive is basically our split of the profit. We found in previous years that we were spending more money on personnel than we were receiving in fees. So we said, well, we'll eliminate those costs and just split the profit. It's a lower total dollar amount, but the expenses are not there.
Still the best hourly deal in Delaware, I think, for tennis.
Very good deal.
Yeah,
And
well,
pickleball has been a big boost.
Right.
Yeah, I was going to ask about that. Have they been transferred, some been changed for pickleball, or?
Yeah, I mean, I think we had a little, I guess, deal with a small dispute between the tennis players and the pickleball players as far as the allocation of court time. So, from what I've heard, but I think that everything's fine, but it just shows that pickleball is very, very popular.
Right.
Well, since you've expanded on it, let's go ahead and talk about it. Later on there, you'll come up with the expenses for the operating the tennis courts of $95,000. Subtract the $5,000 revenue, that's expenses of, say, $90,000. Take the tennis resurfacing, if that happens, say, every 4 years, that's approximately 10,000 a year. So I just want people to understand that tennis courts are costing us about $100,000 a year.
Well, if I
Yeah.
can qualify that a little bit. That is the tennis and recreation department, so it's not just the tennis courts that we're spending the money on. And, you know, in the current year, there's a request it's a one-time deal. It's more of a capital-related item for the $45,000 for the resurfacing. But the costs to operate include the volleyball and the other activities that are, so I don't think the actual cost of the tennis courts anything close to that's a fraction of that, because we have no labor costs in running the tennis courts. The costs are basically maybe cleaning or whether you're going to have to repaint the lines every few years, but those costs, I can assure you, are not $95,000 for just the tennis courts.
Okay. So I guess part of the point is we invest a lot in recreation. Yeah.
Certainly do.
Yeah. Anybody else? Tim, go ahead.
You have a couple, I just, for clarification, on account 400, 500, and 400, 600, the rental tax and hotel accommodation tax,
Give us a line number, page and
It's,
line number there, Tim.
page 2, right toward the top, it's the
Property.
hotel accommodation tax and the rental tax.
Yeah.
Do we break out, or where we seem to have a proliferation now of vacation rental by owner and Airbnb. Do we capture that somewhere in here?
Yes, that all falls under the rental tax category. So we have the gross receipts rental tax, that's 6% on the gross receipts for the rental of that property for the year. And those apply to those Airbnb, VRBO, or properties that are rented, managed by real estate agents. The hotel accommodations tax is exactly that. It's just for hotels.
And is that on the honor system, the Airbnb?
It is. Gross receipts is self-reported.
Okay.
For everybody, it's the honor system.
It is,
Yeah.
okay.
And that is something that we'll just talk about now. There are very sophisticated software programs out there that will capture that, because I think we're leaving a lot of money on the table. Not that I distrust any of our residents, but they just not be aware of that they owe taxes on our Airbnbs, et cetera. So if we could look at the investment of potential software that will capture that information. I know some other local communities have also become involved in that and have been successful in collecting some additional revenue from that. So if that's something we can look at either for this budget cycle or next budget cycle, I'd appreciate that.
I'm glad you brought that up, Commissioner Gossett, because I got 2 calls from folks wanting to know the proverbial answer to the question, is everything on the up and up when it comes to revenue that should be given to the city?
We really, I mean, don't have a methodology to answer that question. But as things have become sophisticated with more on the rental side of Airbnb and VRBO and all of those opportunities, the software has caught up with that to monitor that. And it's just something that I think we should need to look at, whether it's an ROI that would be advisable for us or not. But
I think we have to look at it, because I've asked this question, this will be my 8th time doing a budget, asked this question for 8 years in a row, are we getting everything that the city is entitled to? And I have never believed the answer that I was given for 8 years. So,
And to just reiterate what Commissioner Gossett said, I'm not sure there's a way we can determine 100%, but I think we can probably prove.
we can get above 10%.
But I think this has been discussed many years, ever since the Airbnbs came on, and I think that Matt could probably enlighten us a little bit. Apparently, code enforcement was doing some monitoring. I don't know that there's a formal process in place, but I mean, certainly you can go online and look at HomeAway or Verbo and see whether somebody even has a rental license for the property. Of course, they don't, on those, the last time I looked at them, they don't really tell you the exact street address, so you got to dig a little deeper to figure out where the house is, and then find out who the owner is and check, whether he even has a rental license. So if he doesn't have a rental license, it's unlikely he's paid any of the rental tax.
well, and that's the very point, that we are leaving money on the table, and our constituents are asking why. That there are software programs that at least would catapult what we're doing manually, and why are we not using them? I have no answer for that.
So would you all look into that, and at the next meeting, come back to us with, what are the type of programs, or what can we do to address this problem of knowing whether or not we're getting the full amount of rental tax?
Thank you.
Tim, go ahead.
And then on page 3, the second line, yard waste, it's account 410-250. I'm just wondering what that is. It just seems, that's not collection of yard waste, is it? What the costs there? They just seem to be low.
Well, what that revenue really represents are the fees to buy the yard waste containers.
Okay, all right.
And now that everybody, I mean, it's interesting, I think that when the recycle came out, I'm not sure whether there's a state subsidy, the blue cans that we all have, I think they were given to us. And then when yard waste came about, we had to charge for them.
Yep, no, I get it. I just thought it might have been collection or something, so it's the fee for the cans.
Collection, yeah, and it's going down because everybody's got a can.
Right, okay, thank you. That's all I have, Mayor.
And that's correct. DSWA first started the recycling program. They provided the containers. When they got out of it, they gave us the containers. And then to supplement that, as our number of recycle customers grew, then we ended up buying our own, and we financed them. But when it came to the yard waste program that was designed, we make the property owner purchase their own yard waste containers, yeah. Anything else, Tim?
No, thank you.
Anybody? Commissioner Legree? No?
Oh, I might say, we have been I was on the audit committee 10 years ago, and we were talking to the city manager Faris about web crawlers doing the very things that we just now are talking about. We've been talking about that for years. And so I piggyback with Commissioner Sharp. But at the time, and every time we've asked, it's been the same answer. It just doesn't prove itself. And I think I think it's appropriate to keep looking though.
Sure.
Everybody knows their neighbor not sure that they have a license. And
Yeah, I think if you look in, I think I read in the Cape Gazette that there's
He's here.
wake up, wake up.
that there's I don't know if it was Dewey or Bethany, but somebody has installed or maybe it was Lewis,
Dewey Beach.
was it Dewey?
Yeah, other towns
So I'd
have
be
done it.
curious to see how the success rate was with that. And maybe it's worth a call to them to find out how that software is working and whether it's worth the investment.
And that's what we've tasked them with. Yep. All right, thank you very much. Evan, go ahead there.
Sure. That is everything we wanted to address for revenue. I will just clarify one thing. When we were talking about rental tax, I said the year-to-date was just over 3 million. That's actually previous fiscal year 2022. We have not yet realized the full revenue for this current fiscal year. So I just want to clarify that. Again, that is everything that we had to report on revenue. If there's nothing else, we can move to the mayor and commissioner's account. We will go back and revisit the water and wastewater revenue when we have the public works presentation at the next budget meeting.
I have a question for you overall, I guess for both you and Bert. Is there anything that surprised you thus far?
Well, transfer tax.
Transfer tax.
Blindsided us, and I think
I'm sorry, the
transfer tax decline is, I think we all knew real estate was slowing down, but, and we're probably a little conservative on that, but years ago, the city encountered a big problem. In around the 2007-8 period, they continued to budget the $2 million, and they only got less than $1 million that year. So, and that was a significant impact on the budget at that time. So, we're trying to be as conservative as we can.
yeah, thank you.
Well, in Middletown, and I think some other towns in Delaware, do not rely on the transfer tax whatsoever. All that money goes into a capital program, so they're not dependent upon that money coming in. And that's I've always thought that's a very good program. The only thing is, if we took the transfer tax out of the general fund, it's got to be replenished somewhere. And so you're going to be raising fees or whatever. But I think it's wise to be very conservative. And
I agree. I think that's exactly the right thing to do. If you're looking at all the fourth quarter earnings reports that are coming in, everybody's screaming that we're heading into a recession. I remember how well we did during the pandemic just by being super conservative. And I was noting as we were talking just now how well Bert had done being conservative. And I think if we have a bad summer, because we are so dependent on revenue from tourism that we just have to be just as conservative as we are, for sure. And I think we're all funded up on our employee retirement program, so we're not behind there anywhere.
That's correct. All our pension plans are, with the exception of uniformed police officers, are all contribution plans. They're not defined benefit plans. The states, the uniform officers participate in a state pension plan that, as Commissioner Legree said, it was more than 100% funded as of March 31st of last year. So there's no risk there, and so I think the city can rest on that and not to be too concerned.
thank you. Go ahead.
You had mentioned a couple lines of those interest rates with the Edward Jones investments are broken into the three categories. The interest realized on that, though, they are not restricted to be reinvested in those particular funds, or are they?
Well, they are. Actually, I think by code, the interest earned is actually restricted money. So you'll see it actually in the budget next year actually being deducted.
So they're kind of enterprise funds in a sense?
Well, yeah. I mean, the transfer tax money is general fund money.
Right.
So that interest we can spend on whatever we want to spend it on. And thank you for bringing that point up, because it's really just the wastewater and the water funds where the interest earned will be restricted. But as we're thinking that citywide, that we should earn somewhere, assuming rates remain in that 4% range, and all indications are that they probably will, we're probably looking at earning over $800,000 in interest this year in all three of those accounts.
Great.
Thank you. Evan?
I'm sorry.
Oh, something else? Go ahead, go ahead.
Just variance in the top of page 4, the Henlopen Acre Sewer. It seemed to be a variance between 23 and 24, and 22. You just kind of fill me in on that variant and expected revenue?
The way the revenue for the wastewater for Dewey, Henlopen Acres, and North Shores. Henlopen Acres and North Shores, we have a separate agreement through the county for that. North Shores is a direct agreement between the county and the North Shores community. And the revenue that is generated is really calculated in our agreed upon procedures report that the auditors have. Essentially, it's flow driven. So we are basically looking at the flows that go into the plant, and it's determined by, a meter.
Right.
Obviously, everybody doesn't have their own sewer meter, but there's a single meter that measures what each community sends to the plant. So that calculation is based upon those flows that go into the plant. And so there is some fluctuation, but generally speaking, usually Dewey Beach, but between the three of them, entities, they're over 50% of the flow.
And one last question on the revenue is the new account encumbered sewer impact fees, $1.9 million. Is that, where is that coming from?
I'm sorry.
That's the last one under revenue wastewater.
Page 4.
Page 4, account 4000000.
The encumbrances. Well, basically, what's happened and with the sewer impact fees, they are collected when somebody has new service, and that money is actually set aside. And so the second line item, you see sewer impact fees, essentially what we're doing, we're using money that we've actually collected and have restricted. So now that we're releasing that, we recognize that as a source of revenue. But it's essentially been restricted, and it's not, and it's available. So essentially what the city's doing is using reserves, that they have already collected. And that sewer impact account is restricted, and it has been basically a one-way street where the money just keeps coming in.
Right.
Now that we have these sewer projects where we are utilizing that money as the code permits. The encumbrance from the prior year, the $1.6 million, that came about as a result of us not fully spending all of the of the state DNREC money for the ocean outfall. We got to the end of the line there, and we said, well, we still have $1.6 million to draw. And the representative of the state said, well, that's too bad. And I said, well, how about all these out-of-pocket costs that we had from 2010 up until the time construction started? And I said, I've got a couple $1 million of those. And so they said, well, yes, you can use those. So I went ahead and submitted the invoices to the state. They sent us a check for a little less than $1.6 million, and we've been parking that in a separate account, a CD, waiting for this to happen so we can use it. So hopefully that's not too much history for you.
No, I like to hear those kind of answers.
Yeah.
So, thank you very much.
Yeah, and certainly we'll revisit this at the next meeting when we bring Public Works back, and we'll go back through again the enterprise fund revenue. But essentially, we have $4.4 million in capital projects just within the wastewater department. So when we were trying to balance a $10 million capital budget, we started to look at other revenue sources and looked at the sewer impact fee money as well as the encumbrance from the prior year. So
Quite a conversation between Kevin and Bert.
it's a great conversation, yes.
And we'll continue with this conversation. Our impact fees are pitiful. And now the chickens are coming home to roost. But this is a great topic for later.
Thank you. Now, Evan, go ahead.
Sure, thank you, Mayor. Next, we'll head into the Mayor and Commissioner's budget. That is on page 6 of the support document. Only one item really I wanted to highlight here, that is legal services. We've budgeted again $300,000. Year-to-date, we've spent $222,000, and we've got a few months left in the fiscal year. Other than that, everything is flat.
Just curious on that specific charge that we lay out. Have we had any renegotiations in the contract with our city solicitors, all three of them, in the sense of hourly rates or new personnel or anything of that nature?
We have not.
Okay.
That has been something that we have talked about internally. Most notably, our labor attorney has increased their fee. So that was a big jump that we will see, especially as we head in 2 years, I guess, from now back into police negotiations.
Right.
But it is not something that we've done, to my knowledge, but has been something we've discussed.
And are we able to segment the hourly charges, or if you will, by project or by, we are? So you could produce that for us at some point?
Yep.
Thank you.
Vicky,
Yeah, part of it's one of those catch-22s. If we initiate contract talks with them,
right.
it's going to go up. So,
Well, I don't disagree, but as was just mentioned, that was a surprise to us as the hourly rate increase from our labor attorney. So I think to be able to manage the expected or unexpected is a more fiduciary way to approach this, in the sense of everything's going up. So we need to be aware of that.
Yep.
Thank you.
Yep, thank
Well,
you.
staying on that subject for a minute, it's my responsibility to add that I got a call from an individual who watches our workshops and regular meetings, and was very specific in their question. They want to understand, now that we have not only the city solicitor, but an additional individual, Alex, I believe. They wanted to understand, well, what's happening to the fees? Does that mean the city solicitor's fee is going down because he's now got additional help? Or what is transpiring? So the expectation from them was they wanted an answer from me after we finished all of our budget discussion. So it's not being noticed.
Very good. All right.
And I would agree with Commissioner Sharp. I'd like to know what the 300,000 includes, because we have several attorneys that we pay for different things. And you read in the newspaper that we spent $750,000 just on that 7 acres of Baymar. So I'd like to have like Commissioner Sharp and Commissioner Gosel, I'd like to have a reading of just what we've gone
An
through.
accounting for a future meeting on that.
Well, and I don't want to be misquoted by anybody, because I'm not saying the services are not worthwhile or needed. It's just a failure as a commissioner to be able to answer intelligently a question that comes in from a constituent. Thank you.
Thank you.
And I will mention too, I know Bert had done a lot of work recently, maybe the last year or two, of breaking out for Planning Commission, Board of Adjustment, Mayor and Commissioners, even some of our departments, legal expenses for all of those. So you will see a legal expenses account, which gives you a good accounting of legal fees for each of those various boards, commissions, and departments. But we have, Vicki Hatton does a phenomenal job tracking legal expenses by projects as well, so we can provide you with an accounting of that.
Thank you.
If there is nothing else on Mayor and Commissioners, we can move on to Treasurer and Assessors. That's page 7.
Can you update us on the status of the assessors? In the old days, in the code provided that we had internal assessors and got paid pittance, but they got paid something. And then when we did the citywide reassessment, we ended up changing the code, getting rid of those internal assessors and hired an outside company. We're still using an outside company? We are.
But that kind of a difference, that was an assessment, citywide assessment. I think perhaps, Mayor, what you may be referring to is the appraisers. We still use an outside appraiser for revision of new buildings and that type of information. So those are really two different tasks at hand. But the appraisers, we still use an outside contractor, correct?
Is the word really appraiser versus assessor? Because we do property assessments in town, don't we?
Well, assessment.
I don't think we do appraising. Yeah.
But you're right, but it is two different tasks in the sense of a citywide versus the individual.
Oh, correct.
New builds and what
Correct,
have you.
absolutely.
Yeah.
But
And that department is flat.
where is the contracted assessor's fee? Is that the 2,400? Because our treasurer, well, actually, our treasurer makes 100 a month, maybe.
Well, all the salaries, that's the treasurer and assistant treasurer. Right now, we do not have an assistant treasurer, so we've over budgeted that a little bit. But, you know, if we did fill that position, I would need something to pay her with.
Yeah, not intending to right now, but. So how much are we paying the assessors?
Well, that is going to be reported in the admin section.
Okay.
And I think when I went through the administration department and broke out some of those expenses, I did not make note of the assessor, so I will bring that back at a future meeting.
Okay, thank you.
Bert, could you just pull that microphone a little closer to you?
Can't hear me?
Well, you're very soft-spoken sometimes.
Pull it around like
Sometimes that's a good thing.
Evan has there.
There we go. Thank you.
Thank you.
I have an overall question, and I apologize, I don't have the schedule of what each of these meetings will cover, but will we have a discussion about administration overall in terms of whether departments need help or not? Or whether we should consider full-time positions versus contractual positions? Is that part of the agenda somewhere?
Yeah, so as we go through each of these departments, that can certainly be something we discuss. So on the agenda for today, we have the Building and Licensing Department, as well as Parking, IT, and Parks and Recreation, so.
And so by the time we finish, we'll cover all of those then?
Right.
Okay, thank you.
And I want to ask that question a different way and dovetail on Commissioner Bennett. Will that unveil to us whether or not we are properly resourced?
Said it nicer than me, or more clear than me, I guess.
I don't think it will. I think it'll just give you a depiction of where we are today.
And that's the nugget right there, that for 8 years, I have looked at this budget and never felt comfortable that we have had a revelatory discussion, one way or the other, whether or not we are properly resourced for the present and then the future. So I really appreciate you bringing that up, because I think we need to find a path forward on that.
Well, what triggered it for me was the legal costs and wondering whether there's another way for us to handle that going forward. So I don't know when those, that's why I asked whether we'd have those discussions overall or whether it was individual.
Well, we don't have those discussions. And then later on in the year, if you ask why something is either not meeting expectations of our constituents, sometimes the answer is because we don't have enough staff.
Right.
And there could be good reasons for that. Unable to hire, unable to keep, whatever the situation might be. But I think it's time we had better answers about whether or not we are properly resourced. And it goes to the rental tax, which I am never going to get off of until we figure this out, that if you have a system that you rely on the honor system to begin the process of a business license, there's always going to be an opportunity to circumvent that. So we have to be more nimble in either software solutions or any kind of other outside-the-box thinking. That's all. Thank you.
Thank you.
Well, building and licensing, building license monitors that. I believe there's discussion among the commissioners, I'm not sure, for an additional code enforcement officer. I'm not sure where, so that hopefully would maybe address to some degree.
Maybe to some degree, but my issue is to solve problems, if all we've got is to throw human resources at it in this day and time, that is not sufficient. We need to be looking for software solutions and other types of enforcement, personally.
No, I strongly agree with you, but I think it also looks at the capacity issue of current staff. You know, just because you're adding software, that doesn't necessarily mean that that solves the problem.
Correct.
The software has to be administered and trained and implemented and all that kind of good stuff. So I think that's all part of the package that we need to look at. And if we could, I think it would be helpful. I'm more of a visual person, so if it's possible, I know you got a lot to do, but if we could have the current organizational chart as it is, and then if that could be somehow noted of any potential expansion in staff employees by department or what have you, and if there are any thought processes from your side about software that could supplement this or anything of that nature that we could kind of take a look at to give us, again, to me, it's just looking at a pretty picture says more to me than trying to work it department by department to kind of get a comprehensive look.
Well, my expectation has always been that this is something that the city manager has always done automatically. And if we look back to Sharon, you know, I guess at one point she determined we needed an assistant city manager and implemented that. At one time, she determined we needed a public works supervisor and brought that forward. So again, my expectation is that is a part of the job scope of the city manager.
Well, and I did not want to call that out for our brand-new city manager, but
I don't mind calling it.
but I think it's a very point well made that certainly the expectation is that with fresh eyes, that will be a great boon to having these discussions that we don't normally have.
Just to comment, this business about monitoring the verbos and the home aways discussed for a long time, and it's always, from a revenue side, it's always kind of bothered me too, but I think essentially it'll be your decision whether you add bodies or whatever, or new software. But I think what's important is that you have a process in place to monitor this, and I think the process hasn't been clearly defined, you know. And I think basically if you set it up and you say you've got 3,400 housing units in Rehoboth, and we're gonna find out who does what with them, then I think you'll get something done. But if you just hire bodies and say go out and take a shot at it, I don't think you're going to get your results.
No, exactly. We need to define the outcome that we intend, and then, you know, what is the answer to the question? What are we looking for? But I think that all of that fits into that of looking at staff time, training, purchase. You know, most of these now software, you don't just buy it off the shelf. It's an annual charge, and that's how they, you know, keep making the money, if you will. So those are all considerations. And again, the bottom line is that return on investment. But we don't, honestly, I don't feel we have a full handle on what the potential revenue could be. You know, maybe everybody's out there is very honest and we're doing the best we can, what have you. But I would just like to have that answer proven in a factual way to me. But I am glad, kind of referencing back that Evan mentioned, we've got a comp and class study coming up, and I think that will be helpful to us in looking at comparables, staffing-wise, budget-wise, you know, those issues, so that we can make some informed decisions on moving forward. Thank you.
If there's nothing further on treasurer and assessors, again, I will bring the information back on the assessor at a future meeting. We can move on to the administration department. And that is page 8. Relatively flat in this department. Just a couple things I wanted to touch on. That would be line 511-400, which is contractual services. You'll see there's 115,000 budgeted in there. That is for miscellaneous contractual services, including Atlantic Refrigeration, Lifestyle Document Management, Delaware Elevator, but it also includes fireworks for the upcoming year. So that is budgeted in contractual services. And in other professional services, that's the line below it, 511-500. That is where we have the classification and compensation study. Currently, that is budgeted at 50,000. The ADA transition plan, continuation of that, that's budgeted at 185,000. And the parking and traffic study, which is budgeted at 100,000.
In that line there, where does the city planner, where is that funded?
City planner is funded in the building and licensing department.
And you spoke to contractual services at the 115, and I'm just assuming that all the way down 520,700 maintenance contracts, those kind of go hand in hand with?
These are inclusive of ServPro, which we utilize to clean City Hall. We also recently went to the SaaS migration for Munis, so that is our fees for the Tyler SaaS. We have other elevator services and then the security video system that we have in City Hall.
Thank you.
Something jogged my memory about fireworks. Were we going to discuss something related to that, or is my memory?
We had brought, I had brought
We
forward.
have
I
a
think,
3-year contract or something?
Yes, I had brought forward a couple months ago the 3-year proposal from Zambelli. At the time, I had mentioned that we also had an unsolicited proposal, I think through our Facebook page. So we had both proposals, brought it before the mayor and commissioners, and it was ultimately decided to pursue Zambelli, stay with them, and do another 3-year contract, which we've done.
Okay. Did it stay flat, or did?
There was a slight increase. Yeah.
Thank you.
And I can answer any other questions there might be on administration.
Yeah, just a couple, if I may. 510600, codification.
510.
510600. I feel like bingo here.
That is our E-code subscription, as well as the annual maintenance program for that.
And the line right below that, Board of Adjustment?
Yes. That is any non-legal Board of Adjustment fees, so mostly advertising.
Advertising?
Yes.
Okay. And I noticed is there the next line, Legal Services, Board of Adjustments, and then Planning Commission, is that the same solicitor services and then advertising and what have you?
So the legal services for Board of Adjustment, that would be Hudson Jones, as well as we have some Baird, Mandalis, Brockstead invoices, so just legal. The Planning Commission account is, again, just advertising. And then we've got the separate line just under the Planning Commission, 510-810, which is the legal services for Planning Commission. I will mention too, CDP professional services, we have $10,000 in there just to be available in the event we need to do anything with the comprehensive development plan. Anything as a result of rezoning or anything like that, we have a little bit of a budget there.
So in line 515-500, because I know that we absorb advertising in some other areas, so is that just a general advertising? Is that for if we're trying to hire a new employee, or?
Exactly.
Okay.
Yep, we use it for advertising for positions, any notifications for trash or postcards that we might mail out, usually are charged to that account.
Thank you.
And 517-500, commercial property insurance. I see that has dropped. Have we renegotiated our contract or premiums with them, or is just that, just curious?
When the invoices come in, or when we make the agreement with the insurance providers, we basically get an we basically allocate that, and, it's, we have an annual cost, we allocate it for each month. And so essentially, yes, those are the costs that are quoted. I think that they've redone how we do the auto this year, but yeah, it did go down.
Great.
We also had done this past summer a complete overhaul of our property coverage. So we were very fortunate to have two interns this summer. One of the projects that they were tasked with was reviewing our property inventory and updating names of property, costs or valuation of the property, and cleaning up anything that might either be repetitive or was not included. So we did a complete overhaul as well, which might be attributed to some of that decrease as well.
And is reflective of liability insurance, are we self-insured, or is that also?
Well, we have deductibles on that, but that's the limit of our self-insurance obligation.
Thank you.
If there's nothing else in administration, we will move on to Alderman Court. Just two things I wanted to mention in this department. Again, we're on the conversation of staffing levels. So one of the things that had been discussed for a couple of years was a part-time administrative assistant, or what we refer to as an Alderman Court clerk, which was authorized in the current fiscal year budget. So we have since hired for that position. So that is the increase you see in part-time salaries. And then finally, in office equipment, we have 1,600, budgeted. That was budgeted in the current fiscal year. It was not spent. We're going to rebudget it for next fiscal year. That would be for a TV monitor in the courtroom. Currently, when police officers come in and they need to showcase evidence, they are bringing in laptops and having to show documentation off the laptops. This would give them the ability to display information on a screen within the courtroom.
And is that, I'm just curious, I know there was some concern previously about, if you will, security in the area. And will this Alderman Court clerk be there at times when public is present? Is that one of the?
Yes, she is largely here to do a lot of intake as people come in. She does a lot of phone call taking, emails to schedule various hearings before the alderman, but is always present during Wednesdays when the hearings are held. So
Great, thank you.
Mm-hmm. And that was it for Alderman. Next, we can move on to the IT department, and I know Max Hamby, the IT director, is here. I'll just touch on a couple things very briefly, and then Max can elaborate if need be. Again, relatively flat. There is an increase in the software and licenses account. That is account 506-560. That is for an update to our Gasboy fuel management system. For those of you who don't know, we keep both gas and diesel fuel tanks at the streets department, which is used to fill up any city vehicle. We are able to track and monitor the usage of that utilizing key fobs as well as codes. So we can easily account for and attribute expenses related to fuel and account for those within each department. So this is an update to that management system. That's in the amount of $10,000, so that is the increase there. Also within the telephone line, we are in the process of adding fiber connection to the Lincoln Street water tower for resiliency. That account also includes a few other charges related to Comcast, AT&T, Crown Castle, the Ring Central program we use, and Verizon. Line 52700, that's maintenance contracts. That would just be our Microsoft licensing, and then also radios as well. And then IT capital improvements, there's 83,000 in there. That is for our annual computer replacement program. We do have a capital budget presentation provided, which just shows some photos to give you an idea of what these capital projects are. So for the ID department, again, it's annual computer replacements. We've started, and Max can talk more to this, but we've started transitioning to these laptops with docking stations, which allows us to basically pick up our computer and go anywhere with it and still have access to all of our files. So we do that annually. That's been $33,000 in the budget for several years. We also have proposed a generator for Second Street Water Tower. Again, just in the event that we lose power, we have the ability to maintain the services there, the equipment there. We also have included two other projects, and that is related to Lynchwell facility, that is security cameras and an equipment refresh over there. Max, I'll hand it over to you if there's anything you want to add, maybe on the capital side or anything else within your department.
Good morning. I don't know that I have anything to add. With regard to the Lynch Wells facility, we are planning to do additional extensions of our features out in that facility in the coming year. We talked about fixed base stations for meter reading. So to support that installation in the coming year, we're looking at replacing the radio equipment that allows us to tap into, tap into that facility directly, bring it into our network. We've taken some of the heat off for that by installing what we call a cradle point, which is more of a device that is accessible to us. It runs on Verizon's network or AT&T's network, that sort of thing.
Any questions?
Can I go back up to salaries? How many folks are we talking about?
I currently have 3 people, or it's myself and 2 others in the department.
Thank you.
Very good. Very good. Thank you, Max.
I want to ask the question, are you properly resourced, Max? But I think it might be a bit unfair today. So I'll just leave it at that. You don't need to answer it, but at some point, that might be something that gets a brief discussion.
I think that needs to be a conversation between the department heads and the city manager, and then that question would be asked of the city manager.
I do too. I just want to demonstrate that this is not going away. I thought that might be an effective way to do it.
Point made. Thank you. All righty.
If there's nothing else for IT, we will move on to the Building and Licensing Department. That is page 11. I believe Matt is here as well. Couple things I wanted to touch on with the Building and Licensing Department. You'll notice the part-time salaries, account 501-700. We did not budget anything for that account. That is because we had a part-time employee who has since transitioned to full-time. That employee works part-time with, or half of their time with the Building and Licensing Department, their other time with the Police Department.
What kind of outside services are we using today? We've got a line right about in the middle, 511000, engineering for $10,000.
Sure, so that would be Beacon Engineering. We have started to include them on some of the plan reviews that we have done for different permits. So that is just an expense to account for any engineering consultation we might need for plan reviews. Also, this goes back to Commissioner Gossett's point, account 511-500, other professional services. That is where we have accounted for the Wallace Montgomery assistance with plan review as well. I believe Sharon had an agreement with them where it's a not to exceed $25,000, so we've put $25,000 in for that.
The planner's charging a flat fee, and we're going to have, I think, an extraordinary year. With all these hotels and then anything else that comes up.
I think it's an hourly fee, but I would have to go back to the agreement and see.
That was the original contract, was hourly.
Yes. That was from the transition to, I'm blanking on his name now, Tom?
From Tom West.
Tom West,
to,
yes.
To Wallace Montgomery,
Yep.
right.
And anything else, Evan, to highlight? Or?
No, that's.
I just, if you can, and again, this is maybe for later discussion, but just what are currently staffing in the department? How many people in that area?
Sure. Matt, do you want to talk to that a little bit?
Good morning, Mayor and Commissioners, and thank you, Commissioner. Currently, we have a full-time code enforcement. We have 2 building inspectors, which includes
Give
one.
us names when you give a title, if you would.
Certainly. Code enforcement is Howard Rothstein. Currently, 2 inspectors, which is myself and Corey Schinko. We have a permit technician by the name of Joanne Perry. We have a front counter person, Kim Capano, and we have a part-time help, Sonia Hughes, who splits between us and the police department.
So 5.5 people, or?
About 5.5, that's correct.
Remarkable that you can do that with $375,000. I think it's pretty good going.
Nothing else?
And
Thank
does that, the city secretary,
Bert's giving me stop it signs.
the city secretary, where do the expenses for that fall in?
Administration,
In administration? So it's not
not its own
parsed out
department.
to other, like overhead or anything of that nature?
Right.
Okay. Thank you.
Yep. If nothing else for building and licensing, I would like to skip to parking meter department, and that starts on page 21.
I am sorry, but
Oh, yeah,
one
sure.
question back up on advertising expenses. I know it was commented on, but we had talked about, we've talked about a lot of things, but at one point in time that the advertising responsibilities would be that of the applicant on some of these aspects. Has that ever been followed up on, or could we pursue that in some sense? Because I know that many other municipalities, the applicant is responsible for their advertising, mailing, all of that information, and I don't think we've reviewed that aspect of it in quite some time. But it is common practice in many other municipalities that they're responsible for at least the cost. We still administer it,
Okay.
but the cost of that. And again, it shows only 5,000, but I think with staff time and included in that, that's why I was asking about city secretary responsibilities, because it does need a lot of administration. So thank you.
I think we had maybe even recently looked at that with permanent compliance. I know we increased that to $12.50, and I think that had accounted for some of the advertising costs as well, so.
You know, again, it could just be a comprehensive look at all of those fees and responsibilities.
Anything else on building and licensing department? Okay, so next is, again, the parking meter department. That begins on page 21.
What page number was that? I'm sorry.
21.
21. Thank you.
You will see just a couple things, again, to highlight. Part-time salaries, that's inclusive of roughly 14 parking enforcement officers, 8 office clerks, 4 technicians, and 1 streets assistant, which is largely used to assist with signage and painting throughout the summer season.
On those salaries, I know that there was some discussion, I believe it was Chief Banks, but I think overall, do we know what the minimum is we're offering this
I think it's
season?
$16.25, maybe $16 would be the lowest, but between $16 and $16.25.
Okay, because he had talked about 19 at one time. I don't know if that's not part of this.
No.
Okay.
We have a little bit of flexibility built in there, but we have not yet considered what that increase would be, if any.
Were we able to fully staff last year?
June, you could probably answer that question better than I could. I think we were.
Hiding back there, I'm sorry.
I think we were a little bit short. We made some adjustments, mainly to office hours. I think we had brought that before the mayor and commissioners.
Right.
That would have been within a city manager's report, where typically the office is kept open from 10 a.m. to 10 p.m. Staffing in certainly the evenings, during the evenings and during the weekends is getting harder and harder. People are getting, it's tough to hire people who are willing to work nights, willing to work weekends, willing to work holidays. So one of the adjustments that we had made was actually closing the office doors at 6 p.m., but still having somebody in the office to be able to answer phone calls from anybody who wanted to get in touch with the department. Other than that, anything else, it was just they could leave a message with that individual in the office, and then we would follow up on it the next day. Enforcement is always a challenge that we have, but we make adjustments accordingly. So
can people pay fines after 6 p.m.?
after 6 p.m. they can't. No. We also
Well,
offer the
but
online.
But again, that's only if we have a shortage.
Right.
Optimally, we have a full complement.
Right. But certainly we encourage people to pay their citations online. That's probably the most convenient way to do that.
When you say we had a shortage, do we know by how many?
About 5.
And perhaps this is conversation elsewhere, but I know parking has been a passion of yours, and we've seen some great results from that, and I certainly appreciate that. And I know one of the things that had been discussed in previous have been online permitting for daily, weekly, monthly permit. Have we made any progress with that?
We have not. I think what we have seen is that really to make the program work efficiently, we need to relook at the city code and maybe restrict the free permits that we give out. We have, for example, in the code, if you're a property owner, say if you're in an LLC that owns a property and there's 5 people that are members of the LLC, they're entitled to get parking permits for every vehicle that they have registered in their name. So if there's 5 people on an LLC and they've got 2 vehicles each, that's 10 permits that they could get. So we really we face challenges with the current code and the number of permits that people can get and how they're issued and an efficient online permit system. We found it was going to be very difficult to manage and track all that information. So we really need to, I think, first there has to be interest to amend the code before we look at the virtual permit system.
And is any of that type of questions would be addressed in the parking study being done?
I think potentially. I think what we need to do is revisit with the vendor and just kind of spark that conversation again. I would also like to talk to some other coastal towns. I am not aware of any virtual parking permit system in a coastal resort where you have the seasonality of parking. I've seen those programs work really well at universities, colleges, where you know there's a student population and they can get those permits ahead of time. But for somebody who has a last-minute decision to come down to the beach and they want to be there for a week, I think it could be difficult to communicate the requirement for online permit to them. So some of those nuances we're still working through, but we keep it in the CIP because it's certainly something we want to pursue in the future.
And we currently operate 2 satellite parking permit.
We do. And that was one of the things that changes depending on staffing. So we generally have one location on Rehoboth Avenue and another on Bayard Avenue. Depending on staffing levels, we may operate just one as opposed to 2, or if it's really bad, we'll just remove them all. I think the benefit of the wayfinding signage program that we did was we now have better signage indicating people where to go to purchase a parking permit, being the parking department.
And in that process of looking at online permitting, I would also, in the parking survey, we would address that to make it monetarily attractive to purchase in advance, so that if you, like show up and buy your ticket, it's double the price or something of that nature. So again, in the parking survey, I think if we're doing the RFP to readdress those aspects. Sure. Thank you.
Having you present a balanced budget, does that include any suggested increases in parking fees at all?
No. Does not.
Your ballpark income revenue for parking is what?
Largely through the revenue streams would be Park Mobile, parking meters, which is actually physically visiting the meter and using a credit card or quarters, and then permits as well.
Yeah, and that number, have you totaled that number?
Let me see. Yeah, I would say about 6 million, maybe a little bit more than that.
Okay, and you're projecting 1.4 to collect it?
That's correct.
Okay, Evan.
Good margins.
Yeah.
And of that 1.4, about 500,000 is employee expenses.
Yeah, well, a large portion of it is actually processing fees that we pay for credit card merchant fees as well as fees to Park Mobile.
Okay, I just
So
tallied
yes,
up-
but also salaries as well.
Okay, I just tallied up the first 20 lines or whatever it is.
Yep,
Came up to about 495,
right.
which is not bad. I think we're doing,
Right.
June deserves a very, very substantial raise.
Yeah.
Are those contractual fees, or are they, in other words, the pay by phone, or is it just a 1%, 2%?
Pay by phone is contractual, so they typically charge, I think it's 50 cents per transaction for certain members. Park Mobile, I think, has certain membership levels. And if you are a part of that membership level, then it's like a 40-cent fee for that. They have proposed a 10-cent increase in those transaction fees, so we have accounted for those here. One thing I'll mention on that, and Vicky would be able to talk to this more than I could, but I think several years ago, and maybe Bert knows more information, several years ago, we entered into like a revenue share agreement with Park Mobile, with the other coastal towns. So certainly we pay them a fee, but at the end of the year, they actually cut a check for the coastal towns for a portion of the revenue that they earn that summer. So that's an agreement that we've been fortunate enough to take advantage of.
So simple math is if we raised parking to $3 with pay by phone, it's really $2.50.
Right, now we also charge for credit card transactions. There is a processing fee to recoup some of our credit card fees associated with that, but.
It's per transaction, not per
Right,
hour. So
right.
it's like, if you park for
that's
1 hour,
okay,
it's.
right.
Yeah, but still, yeah, we don't.
Is it a percentage, the fee? It's not a per,
It's not a percentage, it's just a rate, so 50
okay,
cents.
so to piggyback on with Commissioner Bennett, okay.
Yep.
Yeah, because when we didn't discuss that, I don't think, when we raised from $2 to $3, but because we probably haven't over the past, when we went from coins, which there was obviously labor to collect coins, but is this, you find this far more efficient?
Yes.
Okay.
And I know for sure with coins, I know at the end of every summer, we provide a parking end-of-season presentation. We've gone from $1 million, maybe millions of dollars in coins down to 150,000 in coins. So there's largely been a trend towards the usage of Park Mobile and certainly credit cards as well.
That's a great, also savings on staff time and
Yes.
bank fee charges and picking up the, yeah, a lot of them.
Yeah, Park Mobile's easy to administer as well. I mean, just setting up the program, setting up zones is pretty simple to do also, so.
Can I ask a parking question, General, overall, that I get asked a lot, and I got asked twice last week? The 30-minute spots after 5 o'clock or 6 o'clock, do those revert to, are they always 30 minutes?
Always
or
30 minutes.
Okay, so if it's 9 o'clock at night and you want to go in,
Right.
so it's still 30 minutes, okay.
Do we enforce
We have
that?
talked about that, yes, we have.
Yeah, I know, and it
We
comes up
do.
all the time. Yeah.
In the
Yes,
off-season?
In the off-season, we don't.
But
We originally.
in season, we do.
In season, we do.
But we have the capability of making those changes, right?
Right.
Yeah.
Actually, right now, for us, it would largely be a change for the signage only. And I think I had mentioned this before to the commissioners, because we allow payment for more than 30 minutes, but because it's a 30-minute space, it's on the visitor or whoever's parking to pay for just 30 minutes. If they pay for an hour and they're there for an hour, they can get a citation because, again, it's limited to 30 minutes.
And also, I know this is off topic somewhat, but we've had a change in retail space with J. Con Scott leaving, and there are a number of 30-minute spaces there that were specifically provided for them for retail from 9 to 5. So I think that influence, if you will, it's a change in the use in the area. We should respond by changing those 30-minute meters you still have to support the Wooden Indian, certainly, they're retail there, but, you know, I think there are 6 or 7 spaces there, yeah.
Yeah, with the restaurants, same near Lingo's, you know, the
Yeah.
same sort of, that whole row of them.
Right.
Yeah, I know there are a couple ordinances that we would like to draft and bring before you all, just mainly for some clarification purposes, so we can take a look at that, because all the 30-minute spaces are specified in the code, so would require an ordinance, so.
Balky, did you have a
I just had a
comment?
question. Does Park Mobile, or have we ever explored the option of a direct debit to basically eliminate the credit card? That you would set up with Park Mobile or another.
That would be a question I would have to ask Park Mobile. We actually have a meeting scheduled with them this month, so I will bring that up. But to my knowledge, it's just credit card or debit card is all you can
Right,
set
yeah,
up, yeah.
because,
You mean us paying it forward to avoid the fee?
well, effectively, I mean, there's still going to be some kind of a processing fee in there, but it would sort of knock the bank out of it, I'm just thinking in terms of if it's cheaper, we would still recoup our costs, but people could conceivably get a reduction on their parking fees, discount, and that might induce
will
people to
ask them.
stay longer or something, I'm using the ROFO model, where you get your gas cheaper because you get to.
Just a couple other things I wanted to touch on in the parking meter department. The tickets and permits, that's account 508-300. You'll see we have 13,000 in there. That is just for citation envelopes as well as ticket rolls. Account 510-110 is Park Mobile fees. There has been a little bit of confusion because I think we have just too many accounts accounting for these Park Mobile fees. Again, we have Park Mobile fee, and then 2 down, 512, 200 is pay by phone processing fee. So both of those accounts are really for Park Mobile fees. We've consolidated them this year, so we're not budgeting anything in the Park Mobile fee account and putting everything in the pay by phone processing fee account. Account 514-100 is collection fees. You'll recall a while ago, we actually went to T2 Citation Collection Services, which was a huge benefit to us. We are now able to, after a year, citations get kicked over to their collection services, and we are able to add onto the cost of the citation, the cost for the collection services. So that's been a large benefit to us. Parking credit card fees, that is our merchant fees. That's the line just below that, 514-200. Merchant fees for credit card transactions at the meter, as well as any credit card processing merchant fees associated with transactions in the department. Maintenance contracts, that's account 520-700. These are all of our software maintenance, maintenance to our license plate recognition, hardware, software, and then our digital iris platform, which is our back end, which allows us to check real-time alerts, which is, again, a huge benefit of going to this program, is anytime there's an issue with a meter, we get an alert through digital iris, which can also send an email to the techs, and we can immediately dispatch somebody out before we start to get calls. So those software programs have proven to be a huge benefit to us. Finally, I'm very happy to report there's no capital outlays budgeted for this year. This would be we're now 4 years of meter replacement, so we are now multi-space meters citywide and entirely license plate based and enforced through either handheld devices or vehicle. So happy to report there's no capital outlays this year.
So how much did that save us this year?
About 500,000,
About half a
depends.
million
yeah.
dollars.
Can you remind me what our great decision was a few months or more back about Deauville Beach? Is that metered, or is that still kind of a hybrid?
So we definitely need to revisit that. I know June is itching to revisit that. So we are sort of a hybrid approach right now where we are still selling physical permits at Deauville Beach, but we also have installed a meter so that if anybody wants to use a credit card to purchase the daily permit, they can go to the meter and do that. Previously, it was cash only.
Yeah.
So we had to turn people away who wanted to use a credit card. we would like to bring before you at a future meeting a new proposal for Deauville Beach, which would slowly start to transition us towards or away from having an attendant down there every single day, all day.
Great. Thank you.
Yeah, I've got one comment, I guess, about the current system where you have to drive up past the building, perhaps to the machine, get your ticket, get out of your vehicle, walk back to the not real efficient system. Yeah.
Right. Yeah, we had brought a recommendation before you all last year, and that was to go towards, again, Deauville Beach being its own entity, its separate parking system. That's how it previously was. You had to purchase a unique Deauville Beach permit to park there. That would streamline enforcement and also streamline just the whole process of obtaining a permit. And right now, we decided last year not to pursue that approach because, again, any resident that has a transferable permit, non-transferable permit, weekly, daily permit, they can go to Deauville Beach without having to purchase their own permit. So we wanted to keep that program in place, so that's what led to some of the challenges with trying to go towards a metered system to allow for credit card payments, but also keeping the old system in place simultaneously, so.
So Evan, when will we actually revisit all of this about Deauville?
I need to get with June, so I'd like to do it in February.
You think a February workshop issue?
I think so.
Thank you.
Sounds like it'd be really difficult to start the process that we're talking about as long as we're letting everybody
Right.
go there.
It
Sounds
is.
like a tough question.
It is. I think really 5,000-foot view is you have a physical permit and you have a virtual permit. And right now we are trying to marry the two, which is an enforcement challenge.
Yeah.
But I think we have an approach that we could take which would allow us to continue that program before ultimately hoping to transition towards no physical permit, it all being virtual down there.
How often do we get clogged up this last summer? Yeah. Yeah,
I'll repeat into the microphone.
yeah.
I'll repeat for those who couldn't hear June, is quite often, especially during some of the busier weekends, holidays, things like that. It really depends, but occasionally it will back up onto Surf Avenue and Lopin Avenue, and occasionally they will have to require some police presence just to help navigate traffic, so.
Evan, the enforcement issue of, with the license plate recognition, is that how all of the Park Mobile enforcement is done, or do the people on foot or on bike able to?
Yes.
To track?
Yeah, so we have, again, you have Park Mobile, which is phone, and then we have the meters, where you actually physically visit the meter. Whether you're paying Park Mobile or you're paying the meter, you have to enter your license plate number. That information gets fed through our enforcement system and is ultimately pushed to handheld devices as well as the vehicle-based enforcement. Both systems see the same information in terms of payment and license plate. So we have the flexibility to select certain areas where we're not comfortable enforcing via vehicle to have foot patrol go out and enforce with handheld. But all that information feeds into the same system and is enforced the same way.
I would just say the optics of the car creeping around is not as good as I think the enforcement on feet and bicycle. I've heard complaints about that, if there's enough traffic in town, we don't need this putzing around Rehoboth and Wilmington and Baltimore, so just as a, as a thought.
That is everything I had for the meter department. I would like to go, since we're on the topic of parking, jump over to the permit department, and that is page 27. Briefly on parking permits, we do have part-time salaries accounted for in there. Again, we have as many as 4 permit sales. Again, those are the individuals stationed at the kiosk locations on Rehoboth Avenue and Bayard Avenue. We've got about 4 permit enforcement officers. They are on bicycle and then usually 2 individuals down to Deauville Beach selling permits there. Other than that, the one account I just wanted to bring to your attention, 509-400, is parking permits. And that expense accounts for roughly 44,000 permits that we order every single year. And that would also include that amount, any parking permits that we order for the staff or the employee parking lot here at City Hall, but that's a few $100s for those permits. And that's everything I had for the parking permit department.
Evan, just my analyst, a couple of those columns are kind of funky. Looks like we have an extra column in there, so when you take a second batch of this.
Projection column needs to be taken out.
Okay.
Yeah, okay.
The second column,
The projection column, that's, that need to be,
And that the April to October, or?
yeah.
Yeah.
but there's
And the
two
budget.
columns, 2023 budget.
And that should be 2022.
The second column should be, yeah.
That's correct.
2022, yeah.
2022,
Yeah, we'll-
second column.
We'll fix that.
If there are no further questions, that concludes the parking department. Next, we can go to the Parks Department, that is page 23. Again, I will go through just a couple accounts. In this department, I wanted to touch on engineering. We have gone down from the current fiscal year budget. We do have $10,000 in there. We are in the process right now of doing a structural assessment of the Stokely Bridge, that's the pedestrian footbridge, the fishing pier at Lake Gerard, the Silver Lake Fishing Dock, and the Gateway Lighthouse, as well as the Grove Park Pavilions. A lot of that work, or some of that work, is being done in the current fiscal year, but that is to account for any expenditures we might have in the next fiscal year. Under contractual services, $115,000, that covers Sposato for both irrigation and landscaping.
I'm sorry, what line is that?
That is 511-400.
Is that 115 total Sposato, or?
Yes,
Okay. Do they have a separate irrigation contract?
they do. Mhm. Next is touch on playground maintenance, 520-200. That is just Liberty Parks that we contract with for repairs if we need more mulch or to install new equipment.
Plus mulch?
Mhm.
We don't do that ourselves?
I don't believe
We
so.
used to, didn't we?
Sure.
Christmas tree.
So when I first started, the streets department took care of it, and it would take them a week, and we'd have piles of mulch everywhere. So, and it's actually a specific type. It's a IPMA certified playground mulch, so you can't just go to Lowe's and get it. And one of the first things I did was look into subbing that out, and we got our subcontractor gets a better price for the surfacing. So it ended up costing us about the same, including their labor. So it was kind of a win-win. So the streets department was able to free up that week. They usually get it done in 2 days versus 5, 6, 7. So made that change years ago.
So is the streets department still doing mulch, for instance, in parts of Grove Park or everything?
No.
They're doing anywhere there needs to be mulch.
No, the streets department does not do any mulch.
So anywhere there needs to be mulch, your subcontractor's doing it at this
So
point.
if it's inside the playground barriers, then the subcontractor does it. But for example, like all of Rehoboth Avenue, that's done by Sposato.
So Grove Park has the playgrounds with the little raised bed all the way around it, in the interior of that. Then there's a gymnasium type layout near the restrooms, so they would do on the interior of that.
Yes.
Okay. Okay. Thank you. Any questions for Liz while she's up there?
I'll just stay here.
Commissioner Sharp and then Commissioner Legree.
The Scarborough Avenue Street End project, is that currently being funded for this year, or is it in this budget
So
somewhere?
I believe it's under Public Works.
Okay,
And so depending on his time frame for
Yeah.
executing that, the landscaping portion will be done.
okay, I can
After.
wait. I can wait till we get to Public Works. And then back on mulch, I must be mistaken that I thought that our Christmas trees became mulch.
Our Christmas tree recycling program, they might take them, that would be a better question for Mike or Kevin. They don't become our mulch. They might take them to a facility that mulches them.
Okay, so I'll reserve that for Public Works as well.
Yeah, that would be either Kevin or even maybe Mike might know better.
Mike, in streets.
Yes.
Evan, do you know if the Christmas tree recycling program goes to Blue Hen Organics or anything?
I will mention on the topic of Scarborough Avenue Extended, we do have that budgeted in 521-100 in parks. That's the trees, pruning, and landscaping. We have 70,000 in there. That would be for the Scarborough Avenue Extended Garden, and then any other miscellaneous landscaping and tree pruning that occurs.
So based on this budget projection, that project would take place when?
I'm assuming and this is just guesswork on my part, I'm assuming Kevin would probably start it next off season, so fall or winter.
Okay,
So-
I'll just wait till Public Works.
Well, and I
that's
know
fine.
the engineer is working on it currently because we have the erosion issues, and at the same time, we're going to have construction across the street from you. So it'll actually, I think, kind of tie in nicely, so.
Well, I wasn't asking for me, but the whole street.
Oh, less disturbance.
Well, the whole street is aware of little flags that are on the shoreline now. And so they walk down there and then they call and ask what's going on.
What are the
And
flags?
it's just another example for me of not being able to answer an intelligent, a question intelligently.
And I can say right now, nothing is really going on except for the fact we're planning for if it gets approved in the budget. So doing a little preemptive work so that we have the information for the mayor and commissioners before, because if it doesn't get approved, then nothing's
Right, and it's
happening.
kind of a catch-22 because by the very putting of the little the survey flags down there, that's what starts the cycle
Yeah.
of what's happening, you know.
Yeah, but I believe it would be landscaping, 2 new street drains, probably some
Yeah.
regrading, shoreline stabilization, and that pipe has been cracked for 12 years, I believe, so
Yeah.
long overdue.
You done?
I am. You're next.
Jay, you had a question?
Indeed. The 115,000 for contractual services is Bozato.
Spazzato Landscape and Spazzato Irrigation, so 2 separate companies, 2 separate contracts, yes.
Okay. And the number 521200, Lake Gerard Water Quality Improvement, that 18,000 is to a vendor for chemicals poured into the lake?
Very little chemicals. It's mainly our maintenance contract with Envirotech, but it takes care of several different sites. So it's Lake Gerard, so it includes all the buffer management, it includes the aeration system, and then if any pesticides, herbicides, algicides are needed, it includes that as well, on an as-needed basis. So they're not kind of preemptively applied. And then it also includes Silver Lane. We have a little conservation landscape area with stabilization we did about 6 years ago. And then buffer maintenance along Stokely Park.
As I remember the invoices that were displayed at that presentation that the vendor gave, there was more than just a little bit of chemicals were being poured into the lake. I think he had a $3,000, $4,000 breakdown or something like that. And I'm just wondering if we get an accounting, if we get an invoice, how do we know, how do we keep track of that?
So we have in the contract is included a dollar allotment for those chemicals. So we kind of pay that with a flat fee, and then they send us what is used every month as part of the invoice. And they're required to keep track of that and report it through the Department of Ag. So they have good records of that as well. And they also do a good job when they come to visit a site. They usually send a quick email, the actual person, boots on the ground, saying what they did. So we were here, we pruned the buffer, and we spot treated for algae.
Thank you.
Before we leave this, I see in line 521,600, the commemorative tree expenditures for 9,000. And it was 4,900 previously. What's happening on that line?
So the commemorative tree, basically what we do when we started doing this last year, in November when we have to submit the budget for review, Bert will send me an email, and it includes from the beginning of time with that account what we've spent versus what we've taken in. So I subtract them, and whatever's left over is what goes in the budget for this year.
So where did I miss the revenue from that program?
I believe the revenue is shown on there, on the, like, what is it, page 3, where they list all the incomes.
I would defer to Bert, but we do have a commemorative tree donation account on the revenue page, which I think again was page 1, 481, 150.
There are two different programs in place.
Yeah.
And one is the mitigation program where somebody actually pays a fine to remove a tree to the city. We're pretty careful on that. We're restricting that money, and we use it as needed. The donations are treated strictly as revenue, and then we just expense that. We don't have a formal restriction on it, but we have to track it pretty closely.
So Bert, can I not find it in a line item?
Well, I think you can.
10,000.
Page 3, I think. 3.
What line?
Count 400 or 481, 150.
Donations,
In the middle of the page.
the last line of the
Yeah.
section.
No,
see it.
there's donations.
So that's the revenue, that's all? That's all?
Yeah. That's the donation money. Now, I don't want to get too complicated on the accounting piece, but I'm going to have to just a little bit. When we have a fine, I'm recording that as a liability of the city, that we're going to be able to use that money at a future time. Because it's restricted money, we want to know where it is, and we want to know all the details going forward for the future. At the time we spend the money, we will utilize that reserve. It's just like it's a set aside. So, and the reason for that is because it's restricted, and I want to know from year one forward what went through there. So if that money is going to be spent, we'll relieve it, but it's not recognized as revenue in the year. It's basically set aside as a reserve to be used at a point in time. Is that
Bert, you
more
said
than what you need to hear?
You said that was for the fines.
That was for the fines, the mitigation money.
Okay, the line I think I'm looking at is only the tree donations.
Well, yeah.
I'm not talking about fines.
Okay.
I'm only talking about.
That's easy, because we take the revenue in and then we just spend it. I mean, there's no formal restriction on that, so. help me a little bit on.
No, I'm just surprised that we're anticipating getting 10,000 in revenue in 2024. Is that the correct way to think about that?
That's what we recorded, yeah.
Well, I'll save this discussion for another day, a different topic about publicizing programs that we have. But Mayor, back to you.
Yeah.
I'll save that.
I would say, those donations, if we're budgeting properly, we're looking at the history of what we've collected for those commemorative donations. And unless there's just an outright error on there, I think that the $10,000 is based upon past activities.
Yeah. It is.
Is that,
Averaged.
It's a different discussion. I personally bought 3 of them, so I'm just astounded that's all that's on there. But we can move on.
You have to shake some of the trees.
I guess you've got to buy 4 next year. I guess that's how that works.
No, Liz, that's not going to be how that works.
What'd you say during COVID? You just sat around and spent money. That did have me laughing. I'm not going to lie.
I did.
What's the set fee for the tree donation?
I think it's the tree out in the lobby is what we're talking about.
It starts, I believe, our lowest number is $350, and then it goes up to $1,000 as the top tier.
It's a straight up contribution, but you get acknowledgement levels based on what you can.
Yeah, it almost feels like to me it's become a secret program because we don't publicize it, we don't feature it. And if you stumble on it, or if someone speaks to you about it, you'll know it's there. So I think that's just a different discussion, not a budget discussion, of a different day of how we are pushing good things that we're doing for the community. So Mayor, back to you, or Evan.
We do, from the accounting perspective, maintain we've got a detailed list of who all the donors are for all the past years. So Commissioner Gay met with me, I guess about a year ago, and we provided that information. I think the concern was that the donors wanted to make sure we were utilizing the money properly and spending it on tree preservation.
But yeah, I want to acknowledge what you're saying. You're saying, what I'm hearing you saying is we need to give better consideration to being proactive in advertising or marketing this program.
Absolutely. That's why I said that's a different discussion for a different day when we talk about how we actually promote, or if we promote, the good things that we do in the city. So different topic.
Thank you. Anything else on
I think
Parks, Evan or Liz?
The last thing is just a review of the capital outlays that are accounted for in the Parks Department, and I will briefly touch on them and then turn it over to Liz if she has anything else to add. In there we have the Lake Gerard Accretion Restoration Project, which we have discussed recently at a couple meetings. We also have included the Silver Lake Bridge Shoreline Stabilization Project. This was a project that came to us by recommendation from Todd Fritchman. Essentially what is occurring here is that the wave action from Silver Lake is eroding that shoreline, and that shoreline is adjacent to the Silver Lake Bridge. So there's concern about the Silver Lake Bridge abutment there and the shoreline erosion. So there's a recommendation to treat that shoreline and stabilize that shoreline. Next is Grove Park fence replacement. There's just a couple photos showing you examples of how the fence along Grove Park is really in bad shape and starting to fall apart in certain areas. So that project would replace that fence. And then
So Evan, that fence is along Grove Street in the parking lot. It's not the chain link fence
no.
paralleling the canal. Okay.
Correct, Mayor. And then finally in there, and I did want to mention this as well because in the one of the things we did catch in this budget was that we had actually accounted for the Deauville Beach tennis court resurfacing twice. So it is, when we get to the recreation department next, we do have a line item for tennis court maintenance. I think it's $45,000 we had in there. We're budgeting 40,000 in the CIP. So in the next version of the budget, that line item or that amount in the recreation department will go away because again, it's in CIP. But that is resurfacing of the tennis course down at Deauville Beach. There's just a couple photo examples of some of the existing conditions.
That stabilization of the shoreline on Silver Lake is urgent. It is urgent. I looked at it this morning, and you can fall in there. We need to do something quickly about that.
And that, the other thing is, we have it in the upcoming fiscal year budget. We do have funds in the current fiscal year budget. So if there's interest in pursuing that project, we could certainly execute that and get that started immediately.
I would say if you determine an immediacy, then I would suggest going forward with it using funds from this year's budget.
Yeah.
So, not to open up a whole bag of worms here, but who owns that shoreline?
It's a good question. I think the argument could be made that the city owns it. We have not had conversations yet with DelDOT about right-of-way and what their right-of-way might be or any jurisdiction they might have in that area, but that would certainly be part of the discussion of this project.
Does the proper, Kevin's not here, so we'll have this discussion again. Go ahead.
We recently,
The capital improvement program, we have that second opportunity to quiz or clarify each one.
right.
But we need to fix that. I was just appalled.
Yeah, it's in bad shape, and just so everybody knows, there will be, some of the smaller trees are going to be removed, anything under 8 inches. That's part of the plan. So no, there are no surprises.
And what
Go back to that slide.
specific location is that, on the bridge or?
So that is, it's not on the bridge, but it abuts that area of the bridge. So if you see the picture on the left, there's a green highlighted area. It basically encompasses that area only, but it does abut the bridge, but it is not the bridge itself. It's just the abutment of the
So
bridge.
that's on the west side of the bridge.
That is on the west side of the bridge, correct? The picture there is if you are coming into Rehoboth from Dewey Beach.
Dewey.
Yes.
So Liz, when you say trees are going to be lost, are they going to be replaced as well?
Not there now. So the large trees, like the ones that you think of being over there, those will all stay because they're pretty significant. But some of the more sapling-sized trees that have sprung up, those will be cut flush. Generally, in a buffer, in a stabilization zone, you don't want woody vegetation.
Okay.
And we made it very clear, and Todd, Envirotech, understands as well how important the trees are, so that the large ones will be left in place.
Jay, point to John's house and the Fabrizio's house.
Because this is coming from Dewey. Right here, I'm pointing to Fabrizio's house. And right here, it's cut way back, the wave action. But this is terrible.
That's on the east side, though?
Yeah, that, I think is backwards.
East side here.
Yeah.
So you want to, but you can't. This is coming from Dewey, right?
No,
No.
opposite.
Oh, okay, then where are we coming?
You're going to Dewey.
Yeah, from this, yep.
Dewey?
No, that's Rehoboth.
Dewey all the way over.
Yes.
Dewey opposite
You're looking
side.
south.
You're looking south.
You're standing with your back to Bayard right now, essentially.
So I would be looking right down here in this hole like this.
Yeah.
Isn't this, isn't that Tom and John's house and that's for?
Yes.
Yeah, right here.
Yes.
I don't know where the property line runs here. But we just said it was city.
No, the side that's highlighted green there's a tiny little chunk there that isn't owned by the adjacent property. So we just own that, basically the little sliver that we're working on.
Which is where the hole is.
Yep, there's the hole. They did the outfall work, and we've just had a tough time getting it stabilized. So we had the Filtrex, so not the regular core logs, but the Filtrex socks and a few rush plantings as well to help stabilize it, so it won't be visually unappealing when we finish.
Do these lights keep going on and off? Or is
Yes.
it me? Thank you.
All right, so we're sort of tasking you with perhaps finding out who owns that. I'd rather have other people pay for it, obviously, but.
Oh, we definitely own
But
it.
if it needs an immediacy, then I would suggest, my
Do we
suggestion.
own, does it come all the way from the street? Does our right of way come from the street, or does it angle out from the?
It's kind of, if you stand on the road, it is kind of in a straight line. And so we would actually have to probably pull a subaqueous permit. So anytime we do a stabilization on Silver Lake, it's state. So when you look at a survey, they own pretty much up to the shoreline, and then we own beyond that. Where it ties in with the bridge and Del Dot, I'm not sure. Like, that buffer is a question mark. But I think we realize that they probably will not do anything. So I think we've all figured that out over the years that we're better
right.
handling it.
Very good, thank you. Anything else, Alvin
that's
or
all, Mayor.
Liz?
Just a quick, maybe a quick question. We had discussed several times about a parks management plan and a lakes management plan. Are they addressed at all here or in the CIP, or is that just further discussion for another time?
So the parks plan is not included in the current budget. In terms of the lakes management plan, we have one for Lake Girard, which Todd Fritchman had presented, and largely some of the costs incurred within the Parks Department. We touched on the Lake Girard water quality improvement account. A lot of the fees associated with that are implementing the recommendations as part of that plan. That's an annual program. So we have the Lake Girard management plan. We follow that plan. We follow all the maintenance requirements of that. And then in terms of the Silver Lake management plan, we are still working directly with the Army Corps of Engineers on that plan. Are expecting, that was the $25,000 grant we talked about earlier, to complete that in the upcoming fiscal year and finalize that plan, so.
Thank you.
Well, and in terms of like the large scale, if you're talking like the $50,000 parks management plan, no. But a few years ago, we did have a small study done, kind of maintenance and procedures. So we do have that, but it's more of an internal use document on levels of service and stuff like that.
And is there any thought or future thought, maybe next year, of a parks management plan? Would that be beneficial to the city, or?
Was it in the CDP as one of the
Yes.
recommendations?
Yeah, it's an action item.
Yeah, I think just to have these amazing, and the study we had done a few years ago, it showed where we were doing well and where we weren't, quite frankly, and not any different than any other municipality. But one of the things that he couldn't believe was just how much parkland we had per person, how much acreage, how much variety of resources we had. And so that was the one good thing to come out of that in terms of what we're doing well, is we are preserving our land. We're not building on parkland. We're not allowing other people to build on it or leasing it out. And that's such amazing things that most cities don't have.
Preserving is a wonderful thing. Management's a different.
Yeah.
So.
Well.
Yeah, I know, but you're doing
hand
a great
in
job.
hand.
But I mean, we
Well, no, what you're referring to is kind of like the status quo, essentially. And until we have, and there's two different ways to go about it. You can do an overarching plan, or you can do individual parks plans. And it really would be up to the direction of city manager, assistant city manager, mayor and commissioners on which way you'd like to go.
active and we have passive, and I mean, there's all kinds of ways to split the baby, if you will.
Yeah.
But I just think something that needs to be kept on the horizon, honestly.
Agreed.
Thank you.
CDP.
Yeah.
I think that concludes the Parks Department. Next, we'll go into the Recreation Department. Recreation and Tennis, that's page 25. Only two things I wanted to mention within this department. First would be, again, revisiting the Anna Hazard Museum. That's account 52910. We have $25,000 budgeted in there for replacing the roof, again, going from asphalt to cedar shingle. So that is up for discussion. And then finally, just to mention this again, account just below that, tennis court maintenance, 521-410. That amount will be removed because we have it budgeted in the CIP.
As far as the Anna Hazard Museum, you know, it's a historic structure. It's kind of been bastardized, if you will, if we would put a asphalt roof on it. So I'm all for cedar wood shake roof, which mimics what was originally done there, I think.
To speak to the mayor's point, it's interesting that I have the proposal in front of me from the contractor, and the original, so they have to remove 2 layers, and the top layer is asphalt shingle, and then there's cedar shingles underneath it.
Yeah.
So
Yeah. Well, what that tells me is that they went cheap
it is much cheaper,
when they had to
yes.
replace or fix a leak or something.
Mm-hmm.
So Evan is looking for concurrence here, whether to go with the cedar shake roof or to maintain an asphalt roof. Either way, it's got to be torn off, I would imagine, all the way to the
Yes.
rafters and started over again. So
And they were doing new drip edges on both of the roofs, and that also included the front and back porch, if you think about the structure.
right.
And then they also had some minor rot above the door that they were repairing that wood as well.
What's the lifespan of a cedar shake roof?
That's a good question.
20, 30, or it was cedar?
I thought that's what you said you had in front of you was a
Yeah.
cedar wood.
I'm just thinking regular shingles, you can get them 20, maybe 30 if you're lucky. Cedar shake, I'm not sure.
Isn't that what we're trying to decide?
I just know incidentally, the cedar roofs I know people have put on their homes always have leaks. But that's just a couple of people I can think of.
I think the key to this, and I think the mayor got into it, is it's a historical structure. And I've been doing some research lately on what qualifies as historical structures for a lot of different reasons. But we should continue to think about that as a historical structure. Whether we try to get recognition or not, we should follow those guidelines. And I'm sure that's cedar shakes.
Well, and if the siding needed replacing, would we go cheap and put on vinyl siding? I certainly wouldn't. It changes the whole look of it, feel of it, and kind of removes the historic designation.
I have no problem with the $25,000. My question is, how long might it last? Because I would be anticipating we'd have to replace it again in 5 or 10 years. It doesn't matter.
It would be closer to 20-ish.
I was going to say, I think it's similar to a shingle roof in that 20 to 30 year range.
That's all my question was, that I won't have to worry about this in 20 years.
No.
There you go.
None of us probably will.
No, many of us probably
Fingers
will, but I will not be one of them, so, okay.
Some of the longevity's dependent upon the location and how much sun gets on it, whether it's under the trees, whether it maintains moisture for days after a rain versus drying out. So I would say, again, they're probably comparable, but the cedar shingle, right? It's not a shake. I think it's because there's a difference there. Was it called shake or shingle?
It's Blue Label Perfection Shingles and Cedar Ridge Cap.
Shingle. It just is wood is a little thinner than a shake, which is twice the thickness.
And then I guess I'm understanding we have to be on the lookout for potential leaks and things that need to be maintained.
That's with any roof.
Yeah, with anything.
Just something I know you've got a lot on your list to do, but there are historic preservation grants available through the state that maybe we can
I'm finding that out.
qualify for. And there, you know, it certainly is a historic property. I don't know if that's a state designation or trust designation, Delaware Historic Trust.
Yeah, the Department of Interior keeps a series of stipulations for historic structures.
Right.
And I thought you had to do it, but they're granting significance to just so these structures adhere to those standards, whether they've been recognized formally or not. The Bureau of Land Management keeps a record of everything. And the grants are super different in as far as, I mean, we have some structures on the board. It's another whole topic.
So the $25,000 in here right now covers a wood shingle roofing. So are there any objections to maintaining this program? You got your answer. Thank you.
Thank you. That concludes our review of the departments, unless there's any other questions. If we need to jump back to anyone in particular, I think the next and final topic was the Canal dock. Commissioner Goff.
Wait, Evan,
Sure.
before you go to that, any other departments that we didn't go over, are those for a different meeting?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah, check out that. But
I will when I get it on time and early.
when you get it online?
Yeah,
Yeah,
early,
yeah.
before meetings. Really early.
Yeah, I agree with you. If you recall, I was approached by Pat Caluzzi some time ago indicating that the dissolution of the LRCIA, Lewis Rehoboth Canal Improvement Association, was imminent, and that they would end up sending us a check for $8,000, which according to her covered 2 years of annual maintenance on that. So, Evan, maybe you could start off with explaining, is that $4,000 a year maintenance something that was in an MOU or something with the LRCIA? And is that reflective of what our true annual maintenance costs are, and what are our maintenance costs? And then I think Patrick had similar questions too.
Thank you, Mayor. So to address the MOU, just briefly, the MOU with the LRCIA did not stipulate anything about 2 years' worth of maintenance. So as you know, we've discussed or we've received the letter from Pat Caluzzi mentioning the check for $8,000, which we've received to go towards 2 years' worth of maintenance. Right now, really, the maintenance expenses that we incur annually would be for Sposato to do landscaping maintenance down there at the dock. We have asked them to break out, because that has been included within our annual contract with them. That cost is roughly $2,300 to perform that landscaping maintenance down there. Aside from that, I think maybe in a couple years, I want to say a year old, maybe a year and a couple months old. So aside from that, I think looking to the future, it would be certainly power washing would be one of the maintenance items that we pursue, and then miscellaneous repairs if railings start to go bad or any damage happens down there to repair that damage. So right now, our main expense annually that we have accounted for is landscaping.
Is what?
Landscaping.
Sposato for
Yes,
$2,300.
that's correct.
So the $4,000 a year is a good guesstimate at what our.
So how does structural integrity of anything get addressed?
That would need to be something that we look at. I would actually want to talk to Building and Licensing Department. One of the things that we had done this summer was we had our 1-year warranty that covered the dock. That expired in December. So over the summer, we did a walkthrough of the canal dock. We identified some items that were deficient and still needed to be addressed, and were able to have all that work performed within that warranty period. So moving forward, it will need to be something that we continue to look at. I think we have the capability in-house to do some assessment of the structural condition of the dock and evaluate that at least annually to determine what needs to be done for maintenance of the.
So Evan, and I know this was not in the city's purview, but originally, but do we know the structural integrity of that dock?
I'm sure we have reports that were done from Hines and Associates, which largely, I think, did some of the structural reports. So I think within the documentation that they provided when they constructed it, they had to furnish some type of proof and documentation. Moving forward, again, we'd have to analyze it.
And could you just refresh my memory? How long has it been there since it was built?
It has been a year and a few months, I want to say.
It's I think it's 2, closer to. It was built in 2020.
Yeah, it was before COVID.
I know we had the punch list walkthrough about a year ago. So.
And who's got the statistics on the number of folks and the usage of this whole dock?
We do not have a people counter there, or anywhere to my knowledge. I'd say the only statistic we could get would be asking the water taxi what their usage was.
Do we have a water taxi contract?
Yes.
Which I think we're in year, what would we say, 2 out of 3 on that?
We have the contract is for 2 years, and we have the option to extend the terms for an additional 2 years.
That just runs
And
on
we-
Tuesday or something, or
What's that?
it doesn't run all the time?
They have a schedule, I think, on their website for,
Yeah, and I think he adjusts it too, and then they do special tours as well. But
It's a boat ride, it's not a taxi.
right,
Yeah.
largely.
It's not taking me to Lewis to go get a cocktail.
Let me share with you a little bit and expand on the Lewis Rehoboth Canal Improvement Association, some of their involvement with that. I mentioned earlier that Pat had contacted me in advance of the disillusionment of the LRCIA just to give me a heads up. Prior to that, many months prior to that, she approached me and said the LRCIA would like to go to an RFP and help fund a kayak launch. And what was the procedure? And I said, well, I would want to bring it in front of the commissioners. So many months went by, and I kept checking in with her. And then the next thing I know, I get this note about them dissolving. So I just wanted to bring it up, I thought, right at this moment, because do we want to ourselves fund a kayak launch? And the other reason I bring that up is because right now if you recall, we had a contract with a kayak company, and yet they somewhat are stagnant because of problems cited. I think one problem cited was kayak launch, but other problems were cited also, if I recall, about emergency egress and access to the canal itself if they had an emergency or something. So I don't know if that's something that anybody is interested in pursuing. I have no idea what a kayak launch would cost or where it would go. I imagine it would go on the north side of the canal walkway and the dock, which means closest to the power line, telephone pole, and the edge of the Girard Park
So,
boundary.
Mayor, they actually, I believe when we were building the dock a couple years ago, they had the like gangway, whatever you want to call it, like that launch, which was just basically a couple of rails that you could slide your kayak down or up on. They had that included originally, and I believe it came out to just under $30,000 2 to 3 years ago. So I would expect that cost would be significantly more. But when we put the fence in, we did put a gate in the area that we had spec'd that launch going in case it ever did get installed. We wouldn't have to undo work that had already been done. So if you look real closely when you walk there, you're right on target with the location. You can see a gate there.
So you had the location on the north side, the Lake Girard Park side of the canal, not the area between Lake Girard, the Girard Park area, not between the canal entrance and the bridge.
Yeah, on the other side, going closer to like the acres.
Right.
And
'Cause
that
I don't
area.
know if you remember the history of this. When it was first designed, they put an elevator in, and then that was too expensive. And they took that out and they put the kayak launch there, but they put it on between the bridge and the walkway to go down. So now I think the proposal would be, if it's going to happen, move it to the opposite side of the bridge.
You can see, like, if you walk by there, you can see exactly where the landscape architect had intended to put it if the funding had become available.
Does anybody know how a kayak launch works?
Could we back up for just a minute of talking about location to, Mayor, you brought up a great word, the history of this project. And help me with that, because it's my recollection that the history of this dock began with getting cars off of Route 1.
That
Was
that
one
was
of the-
that was the premise for seeking grants
Yes.
through the Department of Transportation, I believe.
Well,
And that was-
and that's taxpayer dollars, right? So my question is, before we go any further in even thinking about this, I'm not understanding how we are determining, and it could be just my absence from the commission while all this was really getting up and going. What is the value of this asset to the city? Meaning, how has the asset performed for the city?
You're
How
getting
many
it
people
now.
are able to take advantage of this? Because I believe if we did the math on how much this has cost in grants, in private fundraising, and whatever, contributions I think from the city have been made, it might be substantial.
I'm not sure that the cost benefits there is what
Well, that-
you're
that-
intimating.
well, because-
But in addition to taking cars off, it was also touted as a recreational facility. So boatings, other boatings other
Right.
than Cape Taxi.
So where-
The kayak launch and
I agree with all that. Where is the support data that says this is how it performed for us?
Yeah.
What you're getting at is a question you asked earlier. We would have to purchase
Exactly.
a people counter. There are a couple thousand and install it, and that would tell us how many people are coming and going. Maybe not necessarily how they're using it. Are they walking down and looking and leaving, which is what I see.
Well, and the other assessment for me, before we talk about location of anything, is how have we assessed the need for a kayak launch?
I think that's a good point, because I was just going to say, what are the warrants that tell us that a kayak launch would indeed be utilized sufficiently to warrant its cost?
I am already hearing from taxpayers, our residents, saying, first of all, they were not happy with the decision about the dock to start with. And now this entity has walked away from it, which they characterize as this has dumped the cost on the taxpayers of the city of Rehoboth Beach. And they've summed it up by saying it would be unwise for the city to embark on pouring more money into something that has not yet been discussed as a proven helpful asset to the city.
Well, it's maybe just a little conundrum for me, because if we had an assessment that said 50 kayakers are using it every day, and they're walking with this kayak down that rampway and turning and danger to pedestrians going up there, then to me that would warrant perhaps a kayak launch. But absent that data, I don't know that I support it.
Well,
Adding
and
on-
I think, Mayor, I'm sorry, Tim, but let me just wrap up, and then I'm done with the thank you, with the doc. That the bigger issue, though, is, yes, the kayak situation is exactly as you described it, but what's the bigger issue for the long-term investment of taxpayer funds on this dock? Tim, I'm sorry.
I love the idea of the dock. However, and I think Commissioner Gossett brought this up a year ago or more, is that as it pertains to the kayak launch, there were parking issues. There becomes insurance issues for the city, liability issues. We had to put a fence up. Is there lighting there in the evening? What's the schedule of the taxi coming in? Yeah, we got a dock, but now we're saddled with trying to make this thing fit with the city. And I don't know what we do with it. I mean, we're in the hole $300,000 because they didn't raise enough money. And then it was kind of handed to us. And I'm frustrated because my neighbors, everybody thought we were going to be getting rides back and forth up and down the canal, which was a great idea and a great thought, but nobody's going to take a $50 boat ride to look at a little frog. So I don't know what we do with this thing.
Do we have any numbers on how many trips?
No.
I think Commissioner Sharp uses that phrase every once in a while, wants versus needs. And this falls into that dramatic category. But, my feelings on the dock are well known, I think, in a sense, in that the city it's cost the city $1,380,000 for the dock, of which $280,000 were capital budget expenditures by us. I guess my question goes back to, and can't be answered today, but my concern is that, the funds, the TAP funds, other donations, whatever, were made to LRCIA. They basically turned the check over and endorsed it to the city, which is a way to do it, I guess. But then where does ownership of the dock fall? I mean, it's on leased land. The funds, the city wrote the check, I guess, to pay for the construction of the dock, but I'm still in the dark as to, quote, who owns the dock. We own the construction, I guess, and maybe that's technically it, but the lease is with Army Corps for that period, which we had to redo because it was initially the Historical Society. So, again, these are technical issues and what have you, but if we have someone fall off and hurt themselves or drowned or something of that nature, I don't know where, who sues who, because somebody's going to get sued. Where's the liability of that? And it technically, you start peeling back the onion, and where do we go? Who owns it? Is it city's responsibility? Is it Corps of Engineers? I don't know, and I don't expect that to be answered today, certainly, but I think it's something that we need to investigate. I've asked that question before, and we punted. But again, I think now, specifically with the dissolution of LRCIA, that brings this to the stronger surface because that partner that we had no longer exists. So I think that's something we need to look at.
I think that's valid, that ought to be looked into. My understanding is that we, the city, own it outright, and the Army Corps of Engineer, I'm sure we could look at their contract, I'm sure has absolutely zero liability for it. Where I thought you were headed also was, you mentioned of the TAP funds and different funds that we receive for it.
Right.
And I guess my question is, what are our obligations having accepted that money? In other words, we accept money from the Department of Transportation, and then we shut down the dock after 2 years, which isn't going to happen. But do we violate, accept the terms and condition of accepting that funds? So I don't know.
Again, a lot to look at forward here, but again, what sparked it with me was the dissolution of LRCIA, and we need to have a look at that in that sense.
Well, maybe we don't resolve this today, but we put it back on a future agenda and figure out what we're going to do. And I think essentially it's what are we going to do with it? We're going to go for a kayak launch as an enhanced amenity. We're going to not do that. And is there anything else we want to do?
How about this question? How many inquiries have we received to say, I want a kayak launch?
Well, I know there's somebody over near Dick Burns' townhouse has kayaks, and I know he'll come out and
So that's one.
say that's one. Yeah, maybe his partner too. So who knows? That might be two.
How complicated would it be for us to lease it to an entity to run it? And is that something we can do?
Concession.
If we want to, but for me, it comes back to one of your original premises, dealing with parking and cars, proliferation of cars, the trailers that pull the kayaks. Do we want all of that there? From the beginning, I've always voiced concern about parking issues, and
Well, but aside from the kayaks, we have the same issue in the absence of the kayaks. That we've got an entity, we've got something that is supposed to be an asset to the city, and how is it an asset to the city? I mean, I think we're all the way back at square one. I'm astounded that we entered into a public-private partnership where the private part could just walk away from us. I'm astounded by that. With all the time that was spent talking about this, I was a big proponent of it. I'll be very honest in the beginning, and was the commissioner who said after the initial $20,000 for design was authorized by the commissioners, not another penny should be spent on that dock until it came back to the commissioners. And apparently, the decision was made. I was gone from the commission for that time.
I
So,
think there were some missteps made, including the MOU. If you recall, I wasn't a commissioner at that time that the MOU was accepted, where the city agreed to pay, what, just under $300,000, wasn't it?
Yeah.
And they said, oh, we'll do the MOU after the fact. And the MOU carries absolutely no weight. It's meaningless. And so I fault the administration at that time.
well, you and I disappeared at the same time from the commission.
Very convenient.
Yeah, yes, it was.
So that's water under the dock.
So we'll bring it up again. Commissioner Markert?
The only comment I wanted to make, I briefly, this was a number of years ago, attended some of those meetings that they had in Lewis, and I think the whole idea was, if I recall, is the fact that they wanted to improve the recreational quality experience or whatever of the canal, and that like you could take a kayak, I would think, from like Lewis to here to Dewey to wherever, and so it would be somewhat of a circuit and from that you'd have people that were willing to do that. Now, whether or not that was something that you would do and then come back, or I think the idea was that you could take it from point to point, or go on an excursion, and conceivably, if there was some organized group, I'm sure there's a kayak club somewhere, that would work out an arrangement where you would take a tour from, let's say, Lewis to Dewey or to the bay or something, and then they would pick you up and bring you back, some kind of thing like that. I mean, obviously it's flat water. It's not like you're whitewater rafting or anything like that. So I just don't know what that experience would be, but I think you'd see the wildlife and you'd see all this other stuff. I think that was sort of the vision of it. But clearly, we've got this thing. We've got this. I mean, I think we have an amenity, but we don't have a really good use for it. We haven't fulfilled it, in terms of that. So I think it's worth, I mean, I don't know if it's germane to these discussions or not, but like figure out what our options are. We do have this, it's there, that's the good news, but we don't really, it's like, I don't think we have the right mindset as to how we really employ it or what it could be. And then knowing the ramifications of parking and all this other stuff, But I think that was the idea.
At a minimum, can we not just try to get some information from the water taxi folks?
Yeah, right.
Yeah, I catch up with him often, so I'll give Dave a call and see what his plans are for this year and how last year went, and see if he can send us some figures on his use at least.
Because I completely agree with you, Commissioner Markert. That was the intent, and the only question I would ask now, how's that working for everybody?
Yeah, well, it's not.
I don't know if anybody's actually tried to take a kayak down there or seen anybody, but really the only way you can do it is by lifting it above your head. Physically get up and down the ramp. So the few times I've seen people with kayaks, they've either been inflatable, where one person can carry it, or it's been two people, say, carrying a single kayak and then coming back for the other single kayak. So it's logistically difficult, and that'll affect usage.
Of course. But we don't even know the usage of the dock to begin with.
Incidental, I mean, I do an official inspection, if you will, once a month on every park facility, that included, and then I'm also there probably, in season every other week on top of that to do work. And in that limited, this is not by any means a technical statistical evaluation, it's very rarely used when I am there during daytime hours when it's open. Now, I could be passing in time and 100 people could have come 5 minutes before I was there for my hour and a half, but that's just a casual observation. A lot of people walk down, look at it, say it's cool, and then leave. Now, maybe they come back with a kayak, I don't know.
Evan, what's the name of that kayak company that we lease to? Do you recall?
We currently do not lease to a kayak company. So what happened with that was we actually drafted an agreement with, it was Quest.
Quest.
We had drafted an agreement with them. They had reviewed the agreement, and then they decided last minute that it wasn't for them because of some of the challenges they face with storage of kayaks on site. They didn't want to be bringing them in and carrying them out every single day. So they wanted to store kayaks on site. It was the location of where to do that. It was the logistics of having to carry the kayaks down to the canal. But then I think also largely it was emergency responses, response access to the canal in the event of an emergency. So certainly the dock provides access to the canal at one point, but if they were to go north or south along the canal, they also need access points for emergency response. That, to an extent, is out of our jurisdiction, so that required a lot of coordination with other property owners in order to provide that access. They didn't have it at the time, so they weren't comfortable moving forward.
So if I'm hearing you clearly, we never entered into a
did not.
contract with anybody?
No.
Okay.
Only for the, only with Cape Water tours for the motorized.
Okay.
service.
So another decision could be, do we want to go out for requests for proposals for another kayak company? Maybe there's another one.
So I was kind of in charge of getting all that information back when it started, and I contacted every kayak paddleboard company in our area, and Quest was the only established company that wanted to. And really, at the end of the day, we were able to I personally addressed the issues they brought up with them, why they elected not to take it. At the end of the day, I don't think they wanted to do it. They changed their mind because all the factors that they gave as not taking the deal, so to speak, we addressed, and they were all known beforehand.
So maybe one of our decisions next week or next meeting is a kayak recreational facility really conducive to what we want in Rehoboth? All righty, so we'll bring that back on a future agenda. I like getting things done and behind us, but not this time. Anything else, Evan?
No, that's all, Mayor.
That's all. So, again, we've got our draft, if I'm going to call it a draft meeting calendar. It's up there. We'll put this online also. And we'll add this canal dock thing back on the agenda. Anything else go to the order for anybody?
I guess I'm trying to, so the discussion about the dock, is that under budget or is that an actual commissioners meeting discussion?
Well, if we want to spend money on it, this is the appropriate time to talk about it.
Okay.
If we want to talk about the logistics of what the next step is in the dock or something, then we could take that to a regular meeting. Right now, it's a kind of a fine line, but again, if it has to do with money, this is the appropriate time. You'll note that what I do want to do is, whether it's on a regular meeting or whether it's a budget meeting, is I like to articulate with some specificity that budget meeting number 2 is going to continue discussion of the canal dock, so that we aren't sliding things in, under the radar a little bit.
I would love to see this continue on as a budget issue, because it is, to me, it is not as simple as just a few $1,000s, Evan, I think you mentioned, for upkeep and so forth. I think it's a much bigger issue, and the dollars that have already been spent on this is astounding to me. So for me to keep energy around this, I would like to see it remain on the budget discussion, but others may feel very differently.
So help me understand. Help me understand. This whole conversation is based on two anecdotal requests for a kayak launch. Have we received any formal written correspondence or from our taxpayers that I want to enhance that amenity of the city right now by adding a kayak launch?
None to me.
No, I think the momentum was just stemming from the original concept and what the goals were. So I think that's,
It's on a lot of people's radar, though. And so whether we do a survey to the citizens, but, I think if you asked any citizen, I think the initial intent, everybody was on board with, particularly getting cars off of Route 1, if it actually was an actual taxi service to Dewey or to Lewis. So, but it is on a lot of people's radar because to all of our discussion here, we are saddled with it, we have to figure it out, and we need to do something with it, right?
well, and overall, I don't know where you're headed, but it's there. We've invested in it. To me, it's going to stay there. And it's a matter
Like somebody gave us a tugboat. What are you going to do with it? Let's take two. I mean, what are you going to do with it?
All righty. So we'll bring this up again. Go to the order. Anything you'd like to say? Anybody? If not, then I want to thank you all. We'll call this meeting adjourned at, 12:43. 12:43.